what they come up, what they have, what they've extracted. And there's a guy that's, his name's Samael Aun Weor, right? And he, he's passed away, but the most modern books of Gnosticism, other than the Pistis Sophia, were written by him. And he's got a book called Cosmic Ships, Truth and Lies About UFOs, Other Humanities, and Our Future. Samael Aun Weor, right? Now, I can't have the guy on my show, obviously, because he's passed away. But if I wanted a perfect guest for what this show's about, other than some of the guests I've already had, I believe I would have him on. So I'm going to read a lecture by Samael Aun Weor about cosmic ships and UFOs. Now, keep in mind that this guy has millions and millions and millions of people that use his books and his stuff and do his prayers and rituals and all this stuff. So all of these people surely would believe what this book says. It's not a very long book, but and I'm not going to torture you. We will take breaks. But if you're bored and you want to listen to a guy that probably one of the best messengers, in my opinion, that's ever came to this planet, talk about UFOs, now's the time. All right? So he says, concerns for the world. So just pretend I'm him right now. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we are going to speak about some very interesting subjects of living reality. Obviously, we are in times of extraordinary concerns for the world. Thus, it is necessary, if it is what we want, to deeply reflect on them at this present moment in which we live. It appears that we have a powerful modern civilization. Since many advances have been made in the fields of physics, chemistry, medicine, engineering, etc., in this our great civilization, we have built powerful ships and directed them towards the moon. Ships have scanned space and have landed on the lunar surface, etc., right? Ships have also been sent to Venus, although they were not manned. Excursions to Mars are planned, and it has been said that around the year 1985, so apparently this was written in the 70s or something, or maybe later, the United States is planning to send a manned nuclear rocket to Mars. We will wait for concrete results on this particular subject matter. All of this is intriguing and extraordinary in its depth. Television has fulfilled a great mission, since thanks to the television we perfectly follow the progress of the rockets that descended upon the moon. Much about lunar life was learned, and this was abundantly investigated. Many wise men previously thought that the moon was a piece of Earth projected into outer space, yet the carbon-14 tests were definitive. Earthlings arrived at the logical conclusion that the moon existed before the Earth. The moon is older than the Earth, and this by itself is sensational. Oh, okay. Well, I thought the moon was a part of the Earth. There's still scientists that are saying that, right? So here he goes about that. All those wise men that in the past maintained the theory that the moon was a piece of the Earth projected into outer space were lamentably mistaken. I repeat, tests and rigorous analysis of the lunar rocks by means of carbon-14 indicated to Earthlings that those wise men who in the past maintained the thesis that the moon was a piece of the Earth were mistaken. Therefore, we are in times of great scientific concerns for the world. We must reflect deeply upon all of these things, at least for a while. You are here because you have scientific concerns for the world, and I am here because I also have great scientific concerns for the world. You have come willingly to listen to me, and I am prepared to converse with you. Thus, between us there must be an exchange of ideas. Indeed, we have all met together in order to study many things, in order to analyze diverse important subjects that are interesting to you and me. Thus, I want all of us, all together, to analyze these subjects of living reality. Obviously, we Earthlings struggle for the conquest of space. And we are sincerely doing it. our scientists fly upon the wings of the projects towards a future in which Earthlings definitively conquer other worlds. Nevertheless, we must not in any way become fascinated with so many sophisms. Instead, it is convenient that we, by our own means, investigate for ourselves. In this way, we will probably avoid many disappointments. You know, in these times, much has been spoken about the subject of cosmic ships coming from other planets. There is a type of antimony, a very interesting antithesis between rockets launched by Tyrians and Trojans to the moon or Venus, and cosmic ships originated from other planets. There's an editor's note here. It says the Tyrians and Trojans are the two cultures in conflict with one another in Virgil's Aeneid. I guess that's a book or something. Among the Tyrians and Trojans, there is a certain skepticism that leads to nowhere. There are therefore concerns on one side and on the other, antagonistic concepts, clashing opinions. To reflect upon all of this is praiseworthy. When we hear about flying saucers, we may pay attention or we might just smile a little skeptically. But listen, there is something real in all of this, since it does not seem to me in any way that our planet Earth is the only inhabited planet. When one studies the panspermia of Arrhenius, one discovers with mystical astonishment that the seed germs of life come from other planets. Thus, the theories of Arrhenius are intriguing. Obviously, with the luminiferous dust of stars, our planet Earth is an inhabited world, a world that rotates around the sun, a planet like any other in infinite space. The law of philosophical analogies invites us to think that if our planet Earth is inhabited, then there also must be other inhabited planets within the infinite space. I will never think that the seed germs of universal life are an exclusive patrimony of the planet Earth. It seems to me that exclusivism in this sense is regressive, reactionary, and retarded. I invite you to think if we are fighting for the conquest of space, it is then possible that this same flight also exists on other planets. Therefore, I will never discard the idea of the possibility of extraterrestrial people, inhabitants of other spheres who have already conquered outer space. To think that we are the only ones in such a huge space, made up of millions and millions of planets, is too reactionary and snobbish. Space snobs. That's what we are. Remember that in the times of Columbus, many were those who laughed at the wise man, the great navigator, when he hurled, as they said then, through the ocean beyond Cape Finisterre. Then, in the time of Columbus, there was the belief that the earth was flat, square. Thus, nobody in Europe accepted the possibility of life beyond Cape Finisterre. You have to forgive me if I'm saying those words wrong. Which in Latin means where the earth ends. It appears that sometimes there are those who think with a medieval mind, denying the possibility of conscious and intelligent life on other planets. Indubitably, they think with an old-fashioned, anti-revolutionary, medieval criterion. Let us admit the possibility of life on other planets. The cosmic ships are a reality. People more cultured than us exist on inhabited planets. Here we go. They already conquered outer space, and about this I can give you a convincing testimony. If I were to base myself on mere intellectual lucubrations, then indeed I would not have a basis to affirm the thesis of other planets inhabited by extraterrestrial people. If I were to base myself solely on purely intellectual conceptions of formal logic or dialectic reasoning in order to emphasize the idea of the possibility of the existence of extraterrestrial people, then I would be just another theoretician. Yet, truly, the existence of extraterrestrial beings is in fact, for me, I know them personally, in flesh and bone. And for that reason, I do not have any inconvenience in giving testimony about them. If you believe it, good. If you accept it, wonderful. If you reject it, that is your business. In any case, I will give my testimony. One day, it does not matter which, when residing in Mexico City, I had a visit to El Desierto de los Leones, the Desert of the Lions National Park. I wanted to peacefully abide there, even if only for a few hours. I wanted to deliver myself to the calmest of reflections. All of a sudden, I felt myself attracted towards a certain place in the forest. I saw a space there in the woods. I do not know why I had the feeling of directing myself towards the place, even when indeed I found an enormous cosmic ship standing upon a steel tripod. Even when he found, this is what he saw, a tripod with a ship on it. Obviously, I confess to you that I felt completely confused, moved. That discovery left me absolutely astounded. However, the story does not end here. A metallic hatch opened, and I saw the chief or a captain descend from that ship. The crew came behind him. Naturally, I addressed the chief, the captain. I saluted him, and he answered my greeting in perfect Spanish. "Good morning," I said to him. "Good morning," answered the captain. Among the crew, I saw two elderly ladies. What age could they be? I do not know. Unquestionably, their ages would have to correspond to other times, not to our earthly time. I spoke to the captain, saying, "Sir, I would like to know the planet Mars, since my own spiritual, divine, sparkling seed germ relates to the planet of the infinite space." My monad, we would say, speaking of the style of Leibniz, who occupied himself so much with the monads. After some minutes, the captain in charge of the ship took the floor and said, "To Mars, is what you said?" "Yes, I would like to know the planet Mars. I would like you to take me there. I'm willing to go there with you now, immediately. Nothing can hold me on the planet Earth." "To Mars," said the captain to me. "Such a planet is just there, indeed. That world is very nearby." Thus, when speaking in this manner, I comprehended that my request, or that my pretension, had been too poor. I believed I requested something very great, but so, why lie? My request had been indeed very poor. By certain intuitive signs, they made me understand that the ship that seemed so splendid to me came down from a mother ship that was hidden, orbiting the Earth. Our solar system, well known with the name Solar System of Ors, was not in any way unknown to the captain, yet it was but one of so many solar systems of the unalterable infinite, undoubtedly. I found myself before intergalactic travelers, people who travel from galaxy to galaxy, wise and cognizant individuals. "I am a writer," I said to him, "and I would like to be taken to other inhabited planets in order to write and give convincing testimony to this humanity about the existence of other inhabited planets. I am a man," I said to him. "I am not a simple, intellectual animal. The request that I make of you is not for me, but for this humanity in general. I would like in some way to contribute to the general culture of this world on which I live." In short, I set out many concepts. Nevertheless, the captain kept silent. I even held on to the tripod of steel with the purpose of not letting go of it until they agreed to put me inside the ship and take off with me. But everything was useless. They kept silent. I examined that man and all the crew. They were personages of a copper color, ample forehead, thin body, stature of about 1 meter with 20, 30, or 40 centimeters. It's about 3'8" to 4'4" at the most. The crew finally sat down on some wood trunks that were in the forest. The ladies were two venerable venerable. Guess I don't know that word. Forgive my redneckishness. Elders. It's not vulnerable either, trust me. And I could not do less than to observe such strange creatures. I could not see in them our terrestrial perversity. I carefully noticed the sense of human responsibility that they had. They spoke little because they have a very high concept of the world. They do not speak on a whim like us. They speak little and say much. For them, the world is gold, powdered gold. They only use it in very indispensable cases. They only use it in very indispensable cases. That's interesting. I did not see the face of assassins on them like ours, the earthlings. Neither did I see the Machiavellian look on them, with so many particular films are adorned. I guess he's talking about the way we perceive the aliens in our movies. And those strange creatures only shown wisdom, love, and power. They are humans, but true humans in the most complete sense of the word. None of them wanted to abduct me. On the contrary, I found too much requesting from them that they take me. I am sure that if they had granted such a request, to me in no way would they have made me a guinea pig for their laboratory. We earthlings are nothing or another thing. If by any chance we managed to catch an extraterrestrial, it is certain that he would immediately go to the laboratory, and as far as the ship, we would confiscate it, and with it, like a pattern, we would be able to build many other ships in order to bomb defenseless cities, in order to conquer other worlds by force, and make devilish things and more, because we earthlings, beginning with me, are truly terribly perverse. That is the crude reality of the facts. In no way I have come here in order to wash my hands in front of you, and to say that I am meek, or I am a meek sheep. No, all of us here are cut with the same scissors. Thus the defects that I have, you have them also, and vice versa. Therefore, I assure you that the testimony that I give about those people is sincere. I am not trying in any way to deform the testimony to deform the truth. Finally, from those of the crew who were seated upon the wood trunks there, one of the ladies stood up, and in the name of all the crew she took the floor and said, "If we place a plant, it is not aromatic next to another that is aromatic. The one that is not aromatic would be impregnated with the aroma of the one that is aromatic." Soon she continued, "The same happens on inhabited planets. Worlds that previously advanced poorly with perverse humanities were little by little transformed by the aroma, the vibration, of neighboring planets. But as you see, we just arrived here at this planet Earth, and we do not see the same happens here. What is happening on this planet?" she asked. Well, the question that they asked me was tremendous, and I had to give an answer then of high quality. Thus, without reflecting that much, but of course taking care of the word very well, I said, "This planet Earth is a mistake of the gods." But soon I completed it, clarifying the concept as best I could, and said, "This is how the karma of the world is." Karma is a word that represents or means cause and effect. By such a cause, such an effect. The earth has causes that brought it into existence. And if within those causes are mistakes, more or less, the effects will have the outcome of those mistakes. Thus, when saying, "This is how the karma of the world is," with great astonishment I saw that the elderly lady who had spoken agreed, inclining her head with one respectful bow. She did not say anything, but simply agreed. The other elderly lady did the same. She made one respectful bow, and all of the crew in moderate genuflection agreed. I don't know if this guy knows a lot of these words, to be honest with you. Well, I said, I will say something to you. I thought that they were going to pull me by my ears, because it was terrible for a poor devil like me to give an answer to people who travel from galaxy to galaxy. But I did it. My answer worked, and that cheered me. Of course, I resolved to take the best advantage of such ascent. Thus I said to myself, well, this is the moment. Thus, I returned to reiterate my request to be taken to another planet of the infinite space in order to give testimony to the people about the reality of other inhabited planets. I am a writer, I said to them, and it is not for me, it is for this humanity. Take me to no avail. My requests were worthless. The silence was terrible. Finally, the captain pronounced a phrase, "Nothing but that, because they speak little and they say much. They never utter the word if they are not going to fulfill it. They are not like us. We tend to say to a friend, 'Tomorrow we'll meet in the morning at 9 and in the cafe,' so that we can converse about our business. And the friend does not arrive, and if he arrives, he appears about 10 or 11 or 12. So those people speak little and say much. It seems as if those personages were truly gods within human bodies. They gave me that impression when conversing with them. Thus I obtained an answer, and as soon as they gave it to me, it is clear that I was satisfied. Along the way, said the captain, we will see. Nothing more. That was the only thing he said to me. But that for me was definitive. If an earthling had said the same to me, I would simply have considered those words like an escape, like an invasion. For example, when one asks for a job and they say to you, "We will consider you when there is a vacancy." When receiving such an earthling answer, one feels like leaving, running 500 kilometers per hour, since we can be sure that we have failed in the request. Yet I was not conversing with earthlings, but extraterrestrials. Along the way we will see which way was the captain talking about. The esoteric path of initiation, the path that I am following and that many are following, the path that leads to the Superman, the straight, narrow, and difficult path of which the Christ speaks, that mysterious path tread by Dante, Hermes Trismegistus, or Jesus of Nazareth. I follow such a path. Therefore the words of the captain filled me with strength. Well, he gave me his hand, his right hand. Then he boarded the ship by a stairway. Also, those of the crew boarded. I comprehended that I should withdraw, thus I did so. I did not want in any way that my body be instantaneously disintegrated by the force of that ship. Thus I withdrew a certain distance so that I could observe through the trees the moment in which the ship took off. It raised slowly until a certain point, and soon it hurried through the infinite space without making any type of noise. Now I assure you that I am giving a testimony about people who already conquered space, about the extraterrestrials. I have come here to tell you the truth and nothing but the truth. I have not come to give false testimonies, because that I would gain anything, nor would you gain anything. Guy has a little bit of problem with English, but that's understandable. I would deceive myself, and I would commit the absurd crime of deceiving my fellow men. I am giving you a testimony of truth, of what concerns deceiving my fellow men. If you believe me, wonderful. If you do not believe me, it does not matter to me. If you laugh, well, that's your business. Yet in any case, Victor Hugo in one of his works stated, "The one who laughs at he does not know is an ignoramus who walks on the path of idiocy." So I give my testimony. The rest is up to you. Yes, there exist other people who already conquered outer space, and who are not earthlings. They are people who come from other densely populated planets. It is urgent to comprehend that those people who already conquered the infinite space do not have vices. They do not drink. They do not smoke. They do not fornicate. They do not adulterate. They do not rob. They do not kill. They are perfect, in the most complete sense of the word. Thus I say to myself and to you, thinking aloud now, have we earthlings such merits? Are we worthy to conquer infinite space? And if we could attain it, what would be our conduct on other inhabited worlds? Are we sure that we are not going to go and drink there, to get drunk, or to adulterate, etc.? Are we so perfect that we believe we are capable of conquering infinite space? Now then, I understand that those cosmic ships are multidimensional. It seems to me that the three dimensions, length, width, and height, are not everything. Euclid's three-dimensional geometry has been abundantly discussed. I.e., for example, this table has length, width, and height. It has three dimensions, but there must be a fourth vertical in this table. What would it be? I say that this is time. How long has it been since this table was fabricated? Behold the fourth vertical there. So he's saying time is the fourth dimension. Indubitably, the fifth coordinate also exists. I understand that it is eternity. And beyond the fifth dimension, there must exist the sixth. That is to say, a dimension that is not time, neither eternity nor the three-dimensional world. The fifth coordinates is eternity. The fourth is time. But what would the sixth be, and the seventh? The sixth is beyond eternity and time. Yet as far as the seventh, it is a dimension zero, unknowable, pure spirit, we would say. Indubitably, there must be seven basic fundamental dimensions. However, while we base our existence on three-dimensional dogma of Euclid, we will remain in a regressive, retarded state. At this present time, modern physics is retarded, regressive, antiquated, old-fashioned, because it is exclusively based on three fundamental basic dimensions of Euclid's three-dimensional dogma. Extraterrestrial ships are based on a different geometry. I say that a tetradimensional geometry must be created. This would be possible if we were more thoroughly investigative the atom. If we would see his English is messed up here. If we would thoroughly investigate the atom. Obviously, it is in the atom where the fourth vertical is drawn up. The day in which we can draw up the fourth vertical on paper, we will be capable then to also create a tetradimensional geometry. With a geometry like that, we could then build ships of 4 dimensions, ships able to travel in time, now to a remote past, now to a remote future. With ships like that, we could conquer the infinite space. Regrettably, we cannot create those types of ships yet. In order to travel to Mars in a nuclear rocket, we will take about 2 years, and according to the explanations of those extraterrestrials that I met in El Desierto de los Leones, I understood that in a matter of minutes, they are on Mars. For them, Mars is just right there, at the corner store, so to speak. And it is because they put their ships within the fourth vertical. Their ships are propelled by solar energy, and this is wonderful. See, I believe that. That probably could be true. Nevertheless, we Earthlings needed to send rockets equipped with liquid fuel, and our astronauts performed 50,000 acrobatics in order to land on the moon. However, extraterrestrials do not need such acrobatics, since for them the moon is just right there. Therefore, I do not see why we have to feel so proud of our so boasted modern civilization. I invite you to comprehend that we Earthlings are nothing but embryos, and that our so boasted modern civilization is not really that worthy. I invite you to thoroughly comprehend the subject of the conquest of interplanetary space. It is necessary to analyze. It is necessary to study. It is necessary to comprehend that if we want the conquest of infinite space, we must begin to study ourselves, because the laws of the cosmos are within us, ourselves, here and now. If we do not discover the laws of the cosmos within us, we will never discover them outside of us. The human being is contained within nature. I don't know. It feels kind of snobbish, but I'll go along. And nature is contained with the human being. Therefore, if we want to conquer infinite space, we must begin to conquer ourselves. At the present time, we are victims of circumstance. We have not learned how to handle the diverse circumstance of life. We still do not know how to determine circumstances. We are toys of all the forces of the universe. We live in a convulsing world, a world that is going to pass through great catastrophes. And keep in mind, he wrote this in the 70s, I believe, okay? Earthquakes are coming. They have been walking across America from south to north. One day, Chile is affected by a great earthquake and tidal waves. Later, Caracas, followed by Colombia. Nicaragua was shaken, followed by Honduras. And in Guatemala, earthquakes just happened. It is necessary to know that soon all of our cities in Mexico will be shaken by earthquakes. San Francisco, California is called to disappear. There is a fault at the foot of California Peninsula that has already been studied. It is a very deep crack that has already begun to devour California little by little. Obviously, California will sink into the bottom of the Pacific Ocean. Ooh, that's scary. We live then in a world that is threatened by great convulsions, and that the psychological state in which we are, and that our civilization is, deserves to be reflected upon by us just a little. The bottoms of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans are full of deep cracks. In the Pacific, mainly, there are some cracks that are so deep, they already put the fire in contact with the water. The water of the ocean penetrates within the interior of the earth in those zones, where the liquid fire exists. Thus, this is forming pressure and steam that increases from moment to moment. The pressure and steam are originating earthquakes on a great scale. And all of you, distinguished gentlemen and ladies, are going to be convinced within a short time there will be not a single place on planet Earth where one can be safe. The earthquakes and tidal waves must intensify due to pressure and underground steam. The ice of the North Pole is melting, and because icebergs float, they drift with water currents towards the equator into warmer water. Hot currents of water are being produced at the South Pole. These currents are existing through some craters. These hot water currents are to penetrate certain places of Guinea. There are changes within the planet Earth, and if the pressure and steam do continue, one day the terrestrial crust will erupt. That's kind of crazy how he's talking about that, and we had those like humongous earthquakes and tidal waves and stuff, right? Because, I mean, this was like, he wrote this 30 years ago, I think. Yeah. There is no doubt that at the present time, any cosmic event, i.e. the arrival of some gigantic world, would be enough to produce such an explosion. We are seated over a powder barrel, and we do not realize it. The Earth in its entirety is being prepared for formidable geologic changes. Thus, nature at the moment is passing through difficult processes. Nature is experiencing a great agony. The fire of the interior of the Earth is uneasy. Sadly, we, on the epidermis of this planet, believe we are very safe. We are raising powerful buildings as if they will never fall to the ground. We build powerful ships as if they will allow us to flee to other planets at any given moment. Yes, we feel like masters of the universe, yet regrettably, any stomachache is enough to put us in bed. Yes, we are weak, yet we believe ourselves to be invincible. It seems to me that we must reflect upon what we are, upon what is happening at this moment. 2 frightful world wars have occurred in this 20th century. The World War from 1914 to 1918, and the World War from 1939 to 1945. And there will be a 3rd World War, and it will be atomic. Then there will be a great Holocaust. Powerful cities will be reduced to ashes. Millions of people will perish. The gravest of all of this is that the abuse of atomic physics will take us to disaster. He's been right about a lot of this so far. A day will arrive on which the decomposition of the atom chain will occur. And then the scientists will not be able to control the atomic energy. We're smashing them together right now, aren't we? Wow. There is no doubt that the radioactive contamination will be frightful. Clouds loaded up with radioactivity will pour over the harvests, contaminating them. Therefore, during the 3rd World War, we will no longer have the necessary food to eat, because the radioactivity will have contaminated the harvest completely. The contaminated food will be worthless for our nourishment. At the rate we're going, we should not feel very safe with a civilization that staggers. And we should not feel very safe with our theories, concepts, or ideas either. It is worth the trouble for us to review everything we have learned in school, college, university, and books written by different writers. I'm not trying to attack any theory. No, I'm only inviting all of you to reflection, and nothing else. This is only the goal of this lecture. Excuse me. We're about to take a break here in just a second. There is a law known as the law of universal entropy. If we take 2 full water kettles, one containing hot water and the other containing cold water, and we place them together, we will see in them a devolving disorder. Behold here universal entropy. If we do not work upon themselves, if people do not work upon themselves, if they do not try to pass through a type of psychological revolution, if they do not modify their customs, their ways of life, and the way of being, then they will march in accordance with the law of entropy. They will devolve over time, and a day will arrive in which there will be no difference between person and persons. And all of us will become terribly perverse. As far as the planet Earth is concerned, excuse me, we cannot deny that it is a subject to the law of entropy. The atmosphere is completely contaminated. The seas have become enormous garbage containers, and many marine species are disappearing. Fish have died in the rivers. To find a river that is not contaminated is already pretty difficult. The fruits of the earth have been adulterated with grafting upon grafting. Now it is difficult to eat a legitimate apple. Now we must eat grafted apples. All of this has altered the order of the universe, the order of nature. Thus, there are soils that no longer produce. At the moment, the globe has 4,500 million people. Well, what? That was, okay, yeah, that was 30 years ago. And the food supply will not be of a sufficient quantity to maintain so many people. In the coming years, there will be millions of people who will die of hunger. That's happening. Even at this moment, there are plenty of people who are perishing because of hunger. Therefore, the earth as a whole is perishing. It is progressing according to the law of universal entropy. The fields that once were cultivable, that bore fruits in abundance in order to maintain everybody, are now sterile. The experiments made with atomic energy and those chemical fertilizers have sterilized the fields. Everything moves in a devolving way. At these moments, the earth is in agony. And what is worse is that it is in agony, and we do not realize that it is in agony. Obviously, if a person is in agony, we already know what will happen to him. Similarly, I can't even say that word. If our planet Earth is in agony, we must understand what will happen to it. A day will come in which the Earth will become equalized everywhere, turned into a gigantic Sahara, or better said, turned into another moon of the infinite space. Nevertheless, the wisdom of the creative demiurge of the universe is magnificent. It is not irrelevant to empathetically tell you that the transformation is only possible by means of sacrifice. For example, if we did not sacrifice the coal in the steam engine, we would not have the steam power to move the train. Similarly, we will say that by means of a great sacrifice, the transformation of the world will also be possible. We know well that the axes of the earth are rising up. The day on which the poles will become the equator is not distant or far away. The day in which the equator will become poles is not distant either. When this occurs, the seas will change. Their beds will swallow the whole planet. There is no doubt that a great chaos will come. Again, at this moment, the ice of the North Pole is already melting. This is originating enormous hurricanes that are devastating entire cities and causing damage, as the hurricane that recently caused many terrible things and obliterated Honduras. So the icebergs are now moving towards the equatorial zone. No longer is the magnetic pole coinciding with the geographic pole. If at these moments an airplane takes off directly towards the North Pole, guided by a compass, if it landed exactly it will not land exactly on the magnetic pole. The pilots would find with astonishment that the geologic pole is no longer there. The geologic pole is rotating away. It is going towards the equator. So the magnetic pole and the geologic pole no longer coincide. This causes the climate to change, starting with certain disorders in the seasons, mainly in the spring and summer. This causes the seas to rise from their bottoms, and this powerful civilization we have created will be destroyed. What is the gravest of all this is that we will also be destroyed. We will also perish. The ancestors of Anuhak said, the children of the fifth son, talking about us, will perish by fire and earthquakes. Now this is properly determined with the catastrophic in Guatemala, or I can't say that. The catastrophe in Guatemala. Some bitch pot of balls. That between parentheses was very serious, since it is not only trembled but continues trembling in that unfortunate country, and that the dead are increasing. Therefore this humanity will perish by fire and earthquakes, and finally will be definitively wiped from the face of the earth. When the oceans leave their beds, thus, after this tremendous and frightful sacrifice, some day from the midst of chaos, new continents will arise, where a new humanity will live. Virgil, the great poet of Mantua, said, the golden age has arrived, and a new progeny commands. I thought this was a UFO book. Maybe we'll get to the point here in a minute. I do get this, though. It's kind of freaky. Yes, we are so perverse that we brought about atomic wars. But the day will arrive in which a peaceful humanity will live on the face of the earth. Okay. A humanity filled with love, and an innocent and pure humanity. A beautiful and wise humanity. So then, the planet Earth once emerged from the consciousness of which is called God, from the ineffable divine, which is where we must return now. But until now we have marched on the path of perversity, thus we will have to perish. But as Peter said in the epistle to the Romans, looking for and hasting unto the coming of the day of God, wherein the heavens being on fire shall be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless we, according to his promise, look for new heavens and a new earth, wherein dwelleth righteousness. There will be new heavens and a new earth, and in them also a new humanity will live. Making reconsiderations on all these principles, it is reasonable and worthwhile that we fight for a radical transformation. It is worth suffering the trouble to make a new man within us. We do not know ourselves, and we need to know ourselves, since within us there are wonders that we do not know. Somebody said to me the other day, "Sir, indeed I know myself." "It pleases me," I responded to him, "that you know yourself. But answer the following question. How many atoms are in a single hair of your mustache?" When asking him this question, he kept silent, and finally he exclaimed that I do not know. I said to him, "If you don't even know how many atoms are in a single hair of your mustache, how do you dare affirm with great emphasis that you know yourself in a totally integral manner?" The man remained confused. I dig that. Within us there is something more than the physical body. There is a psychology that we must study. The physical body is not everything. You feel attracted towards your physicality. You know that you have a body of flesh and bones because you can touch it, because you can feel it. But scarcely can you admit that you have a psychology, because indeed it cannot be felt physically. When somebody admits that he has his own psychological particular individual idiosyncrasy, in fact, he begins to self-observe. Obviously, when somebody self-observes, he begins to become different from others and has possibilities for changing. A nucleus of people has to be saved from this humanity. People who will change, people who are ahead of their time. They will attain a psychological change. Such people will be helped and then taken to a certain place in the Pacific Ocean. And thence they will contemplate the duel of the water and the fire over centuries. And finally, when new lands arise from the bottom of the ocean, those people that have changed will be able to live peacefully. They will become the nucleus of a future humanity. Okay, I know you guys heard that, right? And so when we talk about a new heaven and a new earth that we read, some of us are thinking this thing's coming down from the skies. I want to read that part again. When somebody admits that he has his own psychological, particular, individual idiosyncrasy, in fact, he begins to self-observe. Obviously, when somebody self-observes, he begins to become different from others and has possibilities for changing. A nucleus of people has to be saved from this humanity. People who will change, people who are ahead of their time, will attain a psychological change. Such people will be helped and taken to a certain place in the Pacific Ocean, and thence they will contemplate the duel of the water and the fire over centuries. And finally, when new lands arise from the bottom of the oceans, those people that have changed will be able to live peacefully. They will become the nucleus of a future humanity. So just let that sink in. We need to change, and we cannot change if we do not psychologically self-observe. For that reason, I said that when somebody begins to self-observe psychologically, he provides hope for change and to become a different person. We need to self-observe our thinking, feeling, and acting. It seems to me that psychological observation isn't a crime. It seems to me that to attempt psychological change is not a crime. Why did he say that twice? The factors of discord that produce wars in the world exist within ourselves, within our own persona. In these times, much is spoken about peace. I.e., Mussolini said, "Peace is an olive branch on the sharp edge of 11 million bayonets." Behold, his kind of words and concepts. The Italians executed him. They applied to him their famous Italian vendetta, giving him punches and kicks. Finally, his corpse fell to the ground. A quite sadistic citizen, observing the corpse of Ducey in the mud, exclaimed, I guess it's El Ducey has become a pig. Peace is not a matter of propaganda, pacifications, the UN, nor pro-peace armies, etc. Remember that the UN has sent armies to fight for peace. Do you believe that fighting for peace is peace? You yourselves are witnesses of the United Nations armies that have attacked other armies. The UN has bombed, has taken up the rifle. Do you believe that is how one works for peace? While the factors that produce wars continue to exist within us, there will always be wars in the world. Fear is one of the main causes for worldwide armaments. If a man fears another man, he arms himself with a weapon, a pistol, at his waist. Why? Because he fears the other. If he did not fear him, he would not carry a pistol. If a nation loads itself to the teeth with weapons, if it acquires atomic bombs, ultramodern cannons, etc., it is because it fears that another nation will invade it. It fears that another nation will attack them. Fear is the cause for many injustices to be committed. A man kills another because of fear. Fear for one's life causes many to become thieves. Fear of hunger causes many women to prostitute themselves. Therefore, while the factors of fear, of fright continue to exist within us, there have to be wars, prostitution, robbery, murders, etc. If we want to fight for peace, we must end the factors that produce wars. Fear is one of them. Do we want peace? Well then, we must finish with egotism, since each one of us says, first, I, second, me, and third, myself. If such egotism is projected worldwide, if the nation says, first, I, this nation, second, this nation, and third, this nation, then there always will be conflicts of interest between country, and war will be unleashed. Therefore, peace is not a matter of pacifications, propaganda, nor of armies of peace, nor of the United Nations, nor of UNESCO, nor of OAS. Since if the factors that produce war continue to exist within us, there will always be wars in the world. Peace is an ineffable atomic substance that is beyond good and evil, and that emerges from the abstract absolute space. It is necessary that we explore ourselves in these moments of worldwide crisis and bankruptcy of all principles. It is necessary that we observe ourselves psychologically. At these moments in which the earth is convulsed by earthquake upon earthquake, it is necessary that we reflect upon our present situation, about what we are, about what we project, about our thoughts, feelings, and actions. Each of us here have a psychology. And this is not a matter of believing or not believing, but just observation. Anger that leads us to madness exists within us. Covetousness also exists within us. And we not only covet, but moreover, there are some who boast about themselves as being saints. Thus they covet to not be covetous. Within us is lust that turns us into true beasts. There is no envy. There is also envy within us, which has become the means of social action. Because if we see that someone has a pretty, ultramodern, and flaming car, we envy him and desire to have that car, or a car like that, or maybe one better. If we see that a friend of ours has bought a pretty house and also has a beautiful wife, we envy our friend and desire to have a house better than our friend's. And if we want to boast about being virtuous, we affirm, no, I do not covet. I am content with what I have. Bread, shelter, and refuge, and that is all. Even if the desire of conquering fame, honors, prestige, money, etc. is burning within us. Pride is corroding our heart, and thus each of us has our particular individual pride. We love ourselves too much, and this is very grave. There are many sluggish gluttons, piles and piles, but we believe that we are not sluggish nor gluttonous, but holy little saints. The crude reality of the fact is that within us we have negative values that lead us to failure, and these moments of worldwide crisis and bankruptcy of all principles, and these precise moments in which the Third World War approaches. I say that each one of the psychological defects that we have in our interior is like a demon or a tenebrous entity. When one reads the four Gospels, we find a verse in which it is emphatically affirmed that the great Kabir, Jesus of Nazareth, the Christ, cast 7 demons from the body of Mary Magdalene. Behold the 7 capital sins, if they are multiplied by 7, and many thousands of sevens, then what the great Kabir threw from the body of Mary Magdalene was a legion. Virgil, the great poet of Mantua, said, "No, not if I had 100 mouths, 100 tongues, and throats of brass. Inspired with iron lungs, I could not half those my horrid crimes describe, nor half the punishments those crimes have met." The Aeneid, Book 6. Therefore, the Christic gospel is correct when affirming that each of us is a legion. If we affirm in a clear and precise manner that I is not something individual, but it is that a plurality, we would not be exaggerating. Within each person there exists a pluralized I. I envy, I love, I am afraid, I am lustful, I have egotism. All of these multiplicities exist with us here and now. We are speaking of the field of revolutionary psychology. We are affirming that within us are multiple of psychological entities, and thus this is already properly documented. It is properly documented in all the contradictions that we have in our own mind. As soon as we are affirming one thing, soon we are denying it. Our mind is like the weather. We are full of psychological acrobatics. We never keep the same opinion. Therefore, from where emerges so many psychological contradictions. The brain is nothing but the instrument of the mind. The brain is not the mind. It is made in order to elaborate thought, but it is not thought. Therefore, let us delve thoroughly. From where do many psychological contradictions come? Obviously, they come from the plurality of I. If we state that each one of our eyes has 3 brains, namely the intellectual, emotional, and motor brains, we would not exaggerate. In other terms, we would say in the same manner that the 3-dimensional space of Euclid exists. Likewise, psychological spaces exist within each person. There is no doubt that psychological multiplicity that flourishes in us is a reality within psychological space. I thought this was a UFO book, but Samael Aun Weor, the famous Gnostic, was telling us what our problem is and how we need to fix it. Be right back, folks. But I'm going to keep going here. I'm getting some email and messages telling me to keep going, so we will keep going. Okay, so by the way, you can visit our website at lightingthevoid.com, sign up for the newsletter. Right now we are currently building a massive esoteric library for you guys. Massive. So you do want to be a part of that. So here we go. Nevertheless, ordinary physical senses are not capable of perceiving psychological space, but other senses can. The sense of psychological self-observation can perceive that space. Regrettably, the sense of psychological self-observation is atrophied. Yet while we observe ourselves from moment to moment, we are able to develop that sense. When this occurs, the multiplicity of the I will be a reality. For us, we will see it. And we will also intelligently perceive the psychological space. So, each of us is a legion, and we have our consciousness extremely asleep. The intellectual humanoid is not capable of seeing, feeling, or touching the great realities of psychological space. We need to awaken our consciousness. Because our consciousness is bottled up, inserted within all of those eyes, that in their whole constitute the self-willed, the myself, and the itself. A little bit of English problem there again. It's all right. We need to disintegrate those eyes that personify our errors, and that this is possibly by means of psychological self-observation. It is in the field of practical life, i.e. in the factory, in the office, in the house, in the street, or in the market, or wherever we can discover ourselves. When in relation with people, the defects that we carry hidden spontaneously emerge, and if we are alert and vigilant as a watchman in the time of war, then we see them. Once a defect is discovered, we must severely judge it by means of the superlative analysis of being. Any discovered defect must be studied and later disintegrated. Well, at least he's given us some time to take care of it. Obviously, the mind cannot radically alter any defect. The mind can justify this or that error, change it, pass it from one department to another of our understanding, justify it or condemn it, but never disintegrate it. We need a power that is superior to the mind, a power capable of annihilating any defect. Fortunately, such a power is latent within the depth of the human anatomy. I am emphatically referring to the astral signature of fire. In a clear manner, I am emphatically referring to the God-Mother, the principle of love, the eternal feminine, divine. I am in a clear manner addressing the Divine Mother, Kundalini Shakti, Stella Maris, or the Virgin of the Sea, Tonatzin, Rhea, Mary, Sibylis, Adonia, Insobertia, Diana, etc. I think he forgot Isis, but that's cool. God-Mother underlies in the depths of our own being. It is a flaming power that only the initiate with the sense of the psychological self-observation can perceive. Thus, if we appeal to that igneous and divine power, or divine power, which is a variant of our own being, God-Mother is our being, but a derivative. We can then totally disintegrate any psychological defect that we had previously comprehended in all the levels of our mind. It would be enough to cry out, as when a child cries out to his mother, because he is hungry or thirsty. Yes, it would be enough to beg our Divine Kundalini Shakti for the disintegration of any previously comprehended I defect. Thus, this is how. It could be reduced to cosmic dust, to ashes. Thus, the consciousness that is bottled up within the I defect would be liberated. By means of this procedure, we could disintegrate all the I defects and liberate the totality of the superlative consciousness of the being. A liberated, emancipated consciousness is capable of seeking, touching, or feeling the great realities of the psychological space. A liberated consciousness is beyond the mind and can perfectly discover the reality of all the phenomena that happen in the universe. I want you to know that there are 3 types of mind. We can dominate the first one as sensual mind. The first one as sensual mind, which develops its basic concepts via external sensory perceptions. This mind knows nothing but psychological space. It knows nothing about reality, God, etc. Mr. Immanuel Kant, the philosopher of Königsberg, wrote a book entitled Critique of Pure Reason. Kantian thought, with all its syllogisms, pro-syllogisms, quasi-syllogisms, etc., is formidable. With Critique of Pure Reason, Mr. Immanuel Kant demonstrated to the world that sensual mind can not know anything about reality but the truth about God, etc., since it develops its basic concepts via external sensory perceptions. Therefore, it cannot know anything about the truth. Now, there is a second type of mind. I am referring to the intermediate mind, where all dogmas, religious beliefs, etc. are deposited. Everyone is utterly free to believe in whatever they wish. Therefore, we Gnostics would never pronounce ourselves whatsoever against other people's beliefs. We respect them. We know how to respect our neighbor's religion, and all religions, because we consider that all religions are like precious pearls, linked on the golden thread of divinity. Nevertheless, religion's beliefs are not direct perception of the truth. Either the sun exists, whether we believe in it or not. The earth will rotate around the sun, whether we believe it or not. The fire will burn our finger each time that we put it within the flame, whether we believe it or not. Therefore, what we believe or stop believing is not the truth. Fortunately, there is a third mind, the inner mind, which is beyond intermediate mind. If the sensual mind works based on its external sensory perceptions, then indeed the inner mind works with the precise perceptions of the superlative and transcendental consciousness of the being. Therefore, the awakened consciousness can know the phenomena of nature in a direct, complete, integral, and unitotal manner, and thereafter transmit such data to the inner mind. Therefore, the inner mind knows about reality by means of the data transmitted by the superlative consciousness of the being. Thus, the inner mind knows about the mysteries of life and death. It knows the origins of life. It discovers what the ignorant sensual mind cannot. The inner mind knows from where we come, and where we go, and where we're going, and what the objective of existence is, the purpose of life. The sensual mind cannot know the phenomena of nature in themselves. For example, we see a flower, a carnation. The sensual mind says, it is a flower or carnation. But who told the sensual mind that this is the name of that flower? The sensual mind learned it at school, or was it taught to us at the home or by other people? But we are sure that this is the true name of the flower. This is how they taught it to us. Okay, but with what authority do they who put the name of this flower have? What is the true name of the flower? Are we perhaps the masters of universal wisdom who know the name of that divine architect gave to the flower? In the inner mind, everything changes. Thus we say the true name of this flower is such and such. Its components are such and such. At a school, at a college, at the university, the chemical formula of this flower was delivered to us. Thus we see in the flower the formula that they placed in our memory. But we are not seeing the flower. We are not seeing its true name. We are just seeing what they taught us. We are placing on the flower what we learned at school, at college, at the university, but we are not seeing the flower. To see it is different. For this we must open to the new, so that the flower can speak to us. If we want to know it, we must place ourselves in a receptive state. But we are proud. We believe we are greater than the flower. Thus we name it in this or that manner, and we say, this is a carnation, and its chemical formula is this, because this is how they taught us at school. But we are still not seeing the flower. The consciousness can indeed see the flower and know its real name. In the cosmos, its cosmological name, the consciousness can know its true functionalism and its real elements. The consciousness can transmit that data to the inner mind, and the inner mind can comprehend it. Regrettably, at the present time with our sensual mind, the only thing that we do is to project our ideas and concepts into phenomena. With the sensual mind, nobody can learn the phenomena of nature and the cosmos because life flows insistently. And when we want to retain it even for a moment, we kill it. Thus only with the awakened consciousness expressed through the inner mind can we know for ourselves the phenomena in themselves, here and now. There are two types of science, profane science and pure science. In pure science, theories do not exist, only facts. For example, if I said to you that Count Saint Germain, who lived in the 15th, 16th, and 17th, and 18th, 19th, etc. centuries, is still alive, you would say that I am crazy. But nonetheless, I know Saint Germain, and this is why I give the testimony that he is alive. He lives based on a science that you do not know. Ooh, that's a little scary. This is the pure science, the science of the Superman, a science known by the extraterrestrials who travel throughout the infinite space, the science of the lords of life and death, and the science of those who have opened the inner mind. We are nothing but a part of the universal knowledge, and that is all. Yet we can awaken our consciousness by destroying the undesirable elements that we carry within, thus informing ourselves radically, so that we can become Superman in the most complete sense of the word. Now, at these moments of worldwide crisis and bankruptcy of all principles, and these moments of terrible earthquakes and tsunamis, it is worthwhile that we explore ourselves. It is worthwhile that we try psychological change, a radical transformation. It is worthwhile that we rise up in arms against all antiquated and extemporaneous concepts. It is worthwhile that we become true psychological revolutionaries, that we become true intelligent rebels capable of initiating a new civilization and a new culture. The following news appeared within a large headline on the front page of a very well-known newspaper in Mexico City. But we're getting back to UFOs here. Flying saucers in France and the United States detected by radar. Here we transcribe the text of this alarming news. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, August 2nd. Flying saucers reappeared last night in the Midwest of the United States. Quote, the Highway Police of Oklahoma indicated that the radar at the military base of Tinker near Oklahoma City registered the presence of 4 unidentified flying objects that flew at an altitude of about 7,000 meters, but the military base refused to confirm or deny the news. They hid it. Quote, on the other hand, 3 police patrols affirmed sighting the objects that flew in perfect formation for about 30 minutes. The color of these objects was first red, then transformed gradually into white and greenish blue. The sheriff's office in Wichita, Kansas announced that several unidentified flying objects were observed last night in the sky during some hours at a height of some 2,000 or 3,000 meters. Another quote here. Marmande, France, August 2nd. A flying saucer was seen last night by a student near the city of Marmande in southwest France. According to the witness, it was an enormous luminous disk that landed in a cultivated field and soon took off and moved away at a let's just say fast speed. I don't know what that word means. He just wrote. Quote, from all the corners of the earth arrives alarming news about unidentified flying objects. According to an eyewitness, one of these spaceships landed in France, and the crew of a medium stature came from its interior. In that place, authorities found tracks of an unknown ship. Another one, in Argentina, another ship landed on a mountain of difficult access. A farmer reported it to the authorities, who could observe the ship, but did not manage to reach it due to the steep landscape. Another one in Australia, a cosmic ship flew over a control tower for space rockets at the moment in which the experts of the tower were following the trajectory of the rocket that photographed Mars. With all these, there's so many more of these. I think he's going to stop here. The naked truth of this matter is about flying saucers is that they really exist and that they have been registered by radar and properly photographed. It is impossible for radar and photographic devices to hallucinate. This subject matter about flying saucers is already overwhelming, and even if intellectual loafers and skeptics mock the irony of those who of us affirm the existence of cosmic ships, whether they like it or not, the flying saucers are concrete fact, properly registered by radar. We are absolutely sure that intellectual loafers do not like to face this thorny subject, due to that which is called self-love. Nobody likes for his self-love to be hurt or tampered with. And since they love themselves so much, they're not willing to give up their beloved theories just because intellectual loafers think that human beings are the only ones that exist. Their presumption is such that they firmly believe that only they have the right to live in this wonderful and infinite cosmos. Thus, this is how they are, and there is no way to convince them that they are mistaken. Before the concrete facts, before the overwhelming news about flying saucers, the Gnostic movements remain firm, demanding that the scientists speak with frankness and stop hiding the truth about flying saucers or cosmic ships. In a desert of Nevada, United States, the great North American scientist Adamski came into contact with Venusians who landed close to the place where he was making his investigations. This widely known scientist of worldwide prestige conversed with the Venusians. In South American country whose name we cannot mention exists a scientific society composed of 98 wise men, disciples of Marconi. These wise people coexist with a group of Martians who regularly land in that region. Oh boy, it's getting deep now, folks. What bothers the intellectual loafers the most is that the subject matter does not become public, and that everything is made in secrecy. We ask the intellectual loafers if they are so unconscious as to give a stick of dynamite to a 3-year-old boy. What would happen to a boy who plays with a stick of dynamite? If these flying saucers were given to earthly humanity, we can be absolutely sure that the flying saucers would be utilized for war, and nobody upon the face of the earth would be safe with their life. Let us remember the speed of those ships, their power of vertically ascending or descending, the power of apparently remain still in the air, or that they apparently remain in the air, etc. So to give these ships to humanity would be like giving a stick of dynamite to a boy that he could play with. Therefore, to the gentlemen intellectual loafers who are abundantly displeased with the secrecy of this matter, we advise 3 things. First, to regenerate themselves. Second, a good dose of patience. And third, to abandon the mistaken concept of considering themselves the only inhabitants of the cosmos. The rocket that photographed Mars is not a wonder of science. From their terrible photographs taken from 17,000 kilometers away, it is impossible to retrieve information about whether life can or cannot exist on Mars. It is extremely stupid to deduce the vital reality of the planet Mars based upon a terrible photograph. The innumerable craters on Mars do not signify that this planet is a dead world like the moon. If the Earth were to be photographed from a distance of 17,000 kilometers, it is logical that such a photograph would be similar to that one which was obtained from Mars. In those photographs we would see something foggy, full of innumerable craters. No cosmic photograph can inform us about the oxygen that a determined planet does or does not have. I mean, haven't we landed like a robot on Mars? Somebody needs to email me or message me about that, because this is 30 years ago, so that he wrote this. But anyways, even though the gentlemen intellectual loafers feel very annoyed and send against us all their defamatory dribble, the reality is that the different places on the earth there already exist select groups of people who are in direct contact with the inhabitants of Mars, Mercury, or Venus, or etc. My friends, this night we are going to discuss about a certain very fascinating article that I read in a magazine. This is about the New York blackout. This article is entitled, Doubt About New York's Blackout. We will transcribe for you some photographs of the cited article. Quote, the greatest and most unexplainable electrical fault in history occurred exactly the 9th of November 1965 at 5:28 p.m. On that date and time, 12 million New Yorkers suffered the consequences of a total interruption of a supply of their electrical energy. However, what the inhabitants of New York ignored was, in addition to their city, other cities were submerged in darkness. Quote, just make the emergency lights function, otherwise we are vulnerable to thieves. The U.S. cities of Albany, Rochester, Boston, and Providences were in darkness, and Quebec and Ottawa of Canada also suffered from the same technical fault. Thus, across a broad area of 207,184 square kilometers related with the provinces of Quebec, Ontario, and the states of Vermont, part of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, Jersey, Pennsylvania, no equipment that depended on electricity was functioning. 36 million people, that is, more than the combined populations of Argentina, Bolivia, or Chile, even Paraguay and Uruguay, were in darkness. Elevators, traffic lights, radios, television, and rotary press ceased to function. Electrical ovens, stoves, refrigerators, blenders, toasters, iron lungs, and even dentist millings became useless. Thus, frightened traffic jams were produced in the streets. The situation became even more critical because of the fact that vehicles were left without gasoline, since the gas stations could not supply gasoline. The electrical pumps were not functioning, and many cars were left abandoned. Almost 1 million people faced the impossibility of using the transportation in the metro stations. I live about 30 miles away from here, and my son is sick. We cannot move. I feel like Orson Welles right now. The city was congested with the blackout. The airplanes that were going to land or take off were having difficulties to do so when the illumination on the runways was momentarily off. It is urgent for us to land because we're almost out of fuel. That's like a Die Hard movie. All this stuff really happened, though. Anarchy was increasing. There were dead... There were dead because of many accidents. Thieves abounded. People were distressed because of the darkness. The situation was so critical and unexpected that the gatherings that were being attended in the Crystal Place of the UN in New York had to be suspended. As the duration of the blackout was prolonged, the highest authorities were becoming aware that they were confronting a very dangerous alteration of civic order. Last hours, reports indicate that the panic and disorder are increasing in the streets. The situation is chaotic. Only buildings like this one, where they're with their own electrical plants, are the ones with electrical light. Yet these are very few. Nevertheless, what is indeed the most critical matter is that, in addition to the panic and chaos of this movement, in this immense zone of 207,184 square kilometers, the radar systems do not function. Therefore, any aerial projectile can cross our sky in these precise moments, and we cannot detect its presence. Moreover, we cannot send even one of our guided projectiles in order to intercept it, because the buttons which we command them depend on electricity for their functioning. It is useless. This immense device is good for nothing. These are just like characters lashing out, or quotes that they recorded. Gentlemen, we are one of the most powerful countries on earth. Every year we expend millions of dollars in armaments and in fortifying our system of security. Nonetheless, facing a situation like the present one, we are impotent. A civilization as technical and powerful as our own has an Achilles heel, that is to say, a great weakness, which is electricity. Have you asked yourselves, what good is radar to us, as well as guided projectiles, the telegraph, the telephone, and the television? Good for nothing. Absolutely good for nothing. Of course, the general is right, sir, since we cannot transmit an order or receive any information either. Another recording. This is the bankruptcy of our military and industrial power. Everything is paralyzed. Another recorded quote. Gentlemen, please have a little more composure. It is good to remind you that the government to which all of us belongs to is totally aware of the importance of electricity. In each electric plant, great electronic cerebrums and computers exist, which are in charge of investigating every centimeter of all the cables which conduct the electricity. Thus, when one of these electronic cerebrums discovers, for instance, that one of the cables is overcharged with electricity and that a danger for being fused exists, line number 5 is in danger, then automatically that charge is distributed among other cables of the same system. The overcharge force was distributed between the lines 7 and 8. Likewise, the computers indicate when a great fuse is burned to which line it belongs, and that exact place of the problem. In a third cable of the system, the Albany system, the problem is located between Tower 17B and Tower 18B. We are leaving immediately to go there. Moreover, if a zone, and this is like chaos, man. This is a cited article back then when that happened. Moreover, if a zone, a problem could be produced that cannot be caught by the electronic central plants, then that zone is isolated from the rest so that it does not cause any damage to the other systems. Induction. We have isolated the south zone of Montgomery and are proceeding to make the repair. So I guess they're explaining the semantics of what happens when a blackout happens. Apparently it didn't work, though. Each elevator, each fuse, each switch, and each connection are carefully checked every moment. I am sure that from one moment to the other, the problem that occurred will be fixed, and we will have electricity again. The blackout has lasted only 1 hour. That's a lot of panic in 1 hour. All right, I'll shut up. Disgracefully, those were optimistic calculations that were not confirmed by the crude reality. Some more recorded stuff here. My son, I could not see him in the obscurity. He left, running towards the alley. The great blackout endured exactly 12 hours, not even a decimal of a second more. Frank, come on, we have light again. The moment precise electronic chronometers did not need to be touched in their needles in order to be fixed, because when they received the electric charge anew, they again indicated the hour with great exactness. It is amazing. It is showing the right hour. We must demand an explanation. Quote, thus, in the same mysterious way that the electricity was interrupted, the electricity started to run again in each cable. Thus a blackout of that unexpected duration, like the former, and which curiously had the exact duration of 12 hours, provoked uncertainty in a great sector of North America. Let responsibilities be determined. Someone screaming, whose fault is this? So common and current citizens, industrial people, and journalists ask the government of the United States for an explanation about this phenomena. More telegrams have arrived, sir. They demand for us to clarify that this happened. There is no doubt that a few extraterrestrial human beings were capable on their own to paralyze the whole electrical system of New York and many other cities, as already stated. We see the fundamental difference between the human being and the intellectual animal. It is obvious that everyone considers themselves to be within the Homo sapien, or human kingdom, to be more specific. The philosopher Diogenes walked with his illuminated lantern through the streets of Athens in search of a man, a real human being. Yet he did not find one. Plurality in the Gospel, when presenting Christ to the multitudes, exclaimed, Esse homo, behold the man. How difficult is it to attain the level of human being? Nevertheless, everyone believes themselves to be human. The human being is actually the true king of creation, and he can perform marvels, great marvels, such as that of a blackout of New York. Does he know who caused this blackout? Because he sure is talking like he is. We are absolutely sure that a half dozen real human beings, okay, here we go, could paralyze not only the electrical system of the United States, but moreover all of the activities of the whole world. Half a dozen authentic, legitimate, and true human beings could take the whole planet Earth for themselves without shooting a single bullet, and in a matter of minutes. That's pretty crazy to think about what he's talking about there. He's admitting that 12 people caused this blackout. I don't know if they had powers or if they were just super smart. But here we go. Question. How can it be possible that a half a dozen human beings could achieve that? Answer. Oh, respectable young lady, you are overwhelmed with my words. Well, it is necessary for you to comprehend that the authentic human being is a kind of creation. Only one human being could, in a matter of seconds, disintegrate the planet Earth, to convert it into fragments that would rotate around the sun. Question, can that sort of human being, this is people that are asking him questions during this lecture, okay? Question, can that sort of human being perform that much without being self-realized? Answer, when are you going to understand me, respectable lady? Please comprehend that it is not possible for a human being to exist without self-realizing himself. What happens is that you think in a mistaken way. You suppose that these intellectual animals who populate the face of the earth are humans. Behold, this is your error. Nonetheless, inside the intellectual animal exist surprising possibilities. The rational homunculus, commonly called the human being, is a chrysalis within which the human being can be formed. Do you understand me? Question. What can we do in order for the human being to be found within the chrysalis? Answer. O respectable lady, in this basic book I cannot give you those explanations. Come to our Gnostic studies. Study our books. The Perfect Matrimony, The Mystery of the Golden Blossom, The Three Mountains, and The Parsifal Unveiled, which I might read for you guys. Question. Then in accordance with what you are stating, are true human beings dangerous? Answer. Listen to me, noble lady. The legitimate human being, in the most complete sense of the word, are not dangerous, as you apparently think they may be. If they wanted to make the planet Earth explode into pieces, they would have done it already. If they wanted to invade and enslave us, they could have done it already. many centuries ago. Nonetheless, the authentic human beings neither assassinate nor enslave. They do not invade nations or worlds. What happens... Oh, lost my spot. Oh, man. Oh, here we go. What happens in this day and age is that they are visiting us in order to help us. Because they are compassionate, they will assist us in the supreme hour of the great cataclysm. After the tremendous catastrophe that is expected for us, and when the earth was renewed conditions to support life, then they will establish a new civilization, a new culture on this planet Earth. The intellectual animals are puzzled by the fact that these extraterrestrial beings do not fit at all within our environment, and they do not submit themselves to our obsolete and degenerated order of things. Question. These questions are being asked to Samael. Then, according with what you stated, true human beings do not exist on the planet Earth. Are all of them extraterrestrial? Answer. Respectable young lady, listen to me. Human beings also exist on the planet Earth. Nonetheless, they must be sought with the lantern of Diogenes, because they are very difficult to find. Nevertheless, you can see that everybody boasts of himself as being a human being. Question. What is the objective for us to become authentic human beings? Listen to me, respectable young lady. The butterfly, which joyfully flies in the sunlight, emerges from the chrysalis. Likewise, from the humanoid chrysalis, the authentic, legitimate, and true human being can emerge. This is the original purpose of divinity. Would you be against the purpose of God? God wants each of us to be converted into a king of creation. Only thus can we enter into the kingdom of Melchizedek. Only thus can we enter into paradise. This is why Jesus Christ came into the world. He came to help us. He wanted each of us to become a king of nature. Now, you will comprehend the reason for which we have to be preoccupied. Question. What supposedly produced the blackout then? Answer. With much gladness, I will answer the question of the gentleman who is listening to me. It was completely and officially proved that the New York blackout was produced by an extraterrestrial cosmic ship. Based on this event, the government of the United States created a scientific department with the evident purpose of investigating this matter about UFOs. It is necessary to remember that the moments before the blackout, 2 fighter planes from the United States, which were armed with high-powered projectiles, probably armed to the teeth, were in pursuit of these 2 UFOs. One of the UFOs became lost within infinite space, while the other one descended over the electrical energy plant of Syracuse. Thereafter, the blackout happened, and this is a completely proved record. Those airplanes, armed with rockets, were good for nothing. The best weapons of the United States proved useless. Question to Samael. What was the motive for the blackout, and what was the message? Answer. I will answer the gentleman. Listen to me. If they wanted to reduce New York to ashes, they would have done it in a matter of seconds. However, they are not perverse. They look at this race of intellectual animals with infinite compassion. They were pursued by fighter planes. The USA wanted to destroy them. They indeed were not greeted with a beautiful welcome. They were not approached as brothers. Nonetheless, the only thing they did to the intellectual animal was to demonstrate the state of consciousness and weakness in which he is situated. Thus, when paralyzing the whole electrical system of New York, they gave a demonstration, trying to make the rational beast comprehend the shameful state in which they are situated. At the present time, after such an event, the rational animals should be studying themselves, eliminating their passions and vices, repenting, purifying, and sanctifying themselves. Question to Samael. Do you consider the extraterrestrial beings think we understood that? Answer. Respectable friend, it is obvious that this kingdom of rational animals have their consciousness asleep. Therefore, such reason, they are far from comprehending. the teachings that was given to them. The rational animals are not human beings. Nevertheless, they believe themselves to be omnipotent, powerful, super-civilized, and super-transcended, etc. Question to Samael. Could you explain to us, scientifically, what they did in order to produce the blackout? Answer. Oh, respectable sir, this is a matter of belonging to a superior type of electrical science. I firmly believe that it is possible to deviate the electricity by orienting the current in a different way, to alter the polarities, to invert the charges. Then it is clear that any city would be in darkness. To study this matter in a very detailed way, and thereafter publish the knowledge of it, would to be put it in the hands of rational beasts, the weapons of the human being. What would the rational beast do with such knowledge? Place your hand over your heart and answer the question. Do you understand? I think they already did. They know how to do the EMP, so. Flying saucers with little green people. From Lima, Peru, came news dated August 2nd that stated, a flying saucer with its crew, dwarves of greenish color, was seen by a young student last night on the roof of the house of this capital, according to the statements that he gave today to the Commerce newspaper. This visit, in addition to one reported last week by a guardian of Chosica district, about 40 kilometers from Lima, who claimed to see on the patio of a factory a flying saucer protruding a tube similar to an elephant trunk, which disappeared after 10 minutes of observation. In regard to the flying saucer of last night, Alberto San Roman Nunez, of about 15 years of age, affirmed to have seen a wrinkled greenish being of about 90 centimeters in stature, that's about 3 feet, that slid on the roof. Shortly after, the ship projected a reddish light in the middle of which it took off and flew, leaving tracks on the ground in which 4 landing marks are visible. Maybe, no offense, but, a 15-year-old dude, he might have been, smoking something. I'm not saying that he didn't see it, but, that happens too. Green skin color may be surprising to people, but we Earthlings have races of black and yellow and red-skinned people that could surprise the cosmic visitors. Indeed, not one of the eyewitnesses of flying saucers and extraterrestrial crews would dare to assert that these mysterious visitors have features that differ from those of us, the wretched Earthlings, right? It is lamentable that the science of fiction has been dedicated to propagate false ideas or fantasies about the figure and form of extraterrestrial visitors. It is clear that the skin color varies according to climate, atmosphere, etc. Nevertheless, the human form, whether gigantic, medium, or small, is always the same. Science fiction has been in charge of propagating everywhere, either through the radio or through cinema or by means of television, tremendous lies that are detrimental for humanity. Defamatory calumnies against the extraterrestrial visitors have arisen, since the minds of Earthlings judge in accordance with their perversities, thus wanting to see in our noble visitors all the hatred of the minds of Earthlings, all the atrocities of Hitler, all the monstrosities of the inventor of the hydrogen bomb, all the bloody purges of Stalin, etc. Perverse Earthlings do not want to recognize the noble intention of our extraterrestrial friends. If they wanted to take the planet Earth and to enslave all of its inhabitants, they could do it in a matter of minutes, because they have sufficient elements to do it. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have already done it, because they have atomic and scientific instruments with which they can scatter into pieces any planets in space. Let us remember that long before we Earthlings knew mathematics, were already navigating sidereal space. They were already navigating sidereal space. Our extraterrestrial friends know that the planet Earth better than any of us. Know the planet Earth better than us, and they do not have any interest in enslaving or destroying us, as mysteriously propagated by the science fiction of these times of rock and roll and rebels without a cause. Our extraterrestrial friends know the critical hour in which we live, and only want to help us. We need their aid with extreme urgency, because we Earthlings have totally failed. If the barbarian hordes of Earthlings continue with their stupid intention, that is, to capture or destroy the cosmic ships that visit us, then, lamentably, we will lose the shining opportunity that our brothers from space are offering to us. They want to establish a personal contact with us, but instead of welcoming them with true respect and love, instead of offering them hospitality, we send fighter jets to intercept them. Everybody wants to destroy them. Indeed, we are behaving like savages, very far from all types of civilization and culture. The hour has arrived to change our militant attitude and to offer our friendship and affection to our brother visitors from space. Since they come to help us, not to destroy us, we, the Gnostic brethren, must give the examples by establishing friendly signals, circles with a point in the center, upon the properties and the roofs of our houses, of countries. Lines radiate from the central point, which go towards the periphery. From the periphery are other small lines which radiate that, although they do not arrive at the center, nonetheless indicate that they are going towards the central point. So he's telling you how to draw a friendly circle for aliens, right? Draw the mentioned central point of the circle and paint it with a beautiful golden color to symbolize divinity. The lines that radiate from the periphery to the central point can be blue and short in great quantity. The lines that radiate from the center towards the circle are clearly connecting the central point within the circumference, and these can also be blue. This is a symbol of divinity and Martian religion. We can use it by placing it upon the roofs of our houses, our lands, doing it with luminous centers, or simply painting this, in order to establish friendly relations with the inhabitants of Mars and all of such inhabitants of the cosmos. Such a symbol means that everything comes from divinity and everything returns to divinity. Use the symbol in order to offer friendship to inhabitants of space. Even if the intellectual loafers laugh at us, all of you already know that the intellectual loafers are 100% skeptical. Right, well, even though they boast of being super civilized, they believe themselves to be very wise when using satire and fine irony against all of us, and anyone who does not want to think like them. Oh man, that got pretty interesting. I was wondering if he was going to get back to the alien parts, but yeah, that's pretty rad. I mean, I don't know. What do you guys think? You know, you can message me and let me know, or leave a voicemail. 501-777-5631. If you want, you can call. I want to try to finish this book. It's not a very long one. We don't have much further to go. But I do need to take a break. So, you know, we'll be right. He was right about what he's, the blackout did happen, right? What if he's right about all this? I mean, I've heard some UFO stories before, right? I've heard lots of things, lots of UFO stories, lots of people that said they saw UFOs, etc. But, I mean, he's claiming that there's already on record, that apparently we might be able to look up, if somebody could look that up, that'd be cool, of these ships flying after UFOs and trying to knock them out of the sky, and then they blacked out New York. That's pretty cool. I mean, I'm not saying, oh, that's cool, or like that I believe it. Of course, you know, be honest with you, I'm a bit of a Gnostic myself, so I'm going to study it. But even Samael in all his books, if you've read any, will tell you not to take his word for things, to look things up yourself. That's part of being a Gnostic. But this is pretty interesting. I think I'm going to go just a little bit longer. And if you guys want to call in, you can call in to interrupt me if you want to. But it's 501-777-5631. But yeah, I'm having fun. I'm getting some pretty cool messages here. Some of them are a little prove what he's saying, but I won't go there. Yeah, so here we go. Pure science. The Lemurians of ancient times had developed objective reasoning. Likewise, many people in Atlantis possessed that type of reasoning. Obviously, the human beings from the Polar and Hyperborean epochs also possessed objective reasoning. Yet it is regrettable that in the current age of Kali Yuga, very few have developed objective reasoning within their interior nature, since subjective rationalism is in fashion. It is what predominates in these times. Subjective rationalism is the basis for Kalkian personalities. Let us understand by Kalkian personalities those pseudo-esotericists, pseudo-occultist, and pseudo-scientist people from this modern epoch, along with all of their know-it-all types of foolishness. Never has there been as much darkness as there is in the epoch of Kali Yuga. In fact, only those who have developed objective reasoning have access to pure science. Let us distinguish between the pseudoscience of this epoch of Kali Yuga and pure science. Kalkian personalities, the know-it-alls of the Tower of Babel, the studious ignoramus of subjective rationalism, will never have access to pure science. As an example of what pure science is, in complete opposition to the ultra-modern pseudoscience, let us observe the following example. The scientists from the present Tower of Babel, or NASA launch rockets, shoddy crap heaps into outer space, propelled by volatile combustion. Thus, after performing their circus feats, they finally land their infamous so-called astronauts on the moon. Behold, here the outcome of the merely subjective rationalism. In opposition, and as an example of pure science, there are interplanetary ships propelled by solar energy, within which liquid combustion is not necessary. Ships that travel from galaxy to galaxy at velocities faster than the speed of light. The circus adventures of the famous astronauts nor anything of the sort are needed, since this belongs, as I already stated, to pure science, to objective reasoning. That kind of reminds me of Thoth. If you listen to the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, Josh Reeves is reading, where they keep saying, "Fast we flew on the wings of the morning star," the sun. That's pretty cool. Anyways, looking at this, therefore, it is in a completely logic confrontation we see on the side of subjective rationalism, the circus-like rockets, and the side of pure science and objective reasoning are the extraterrestrial ships. The skeptical and incredulous ones smile abundantly when we talk about extraterrestrial ships that travel from galaxy to galaxy. Nonetheless, a doctor, a celebrity of NASA, was taken in one of those ships and wrote a book that is in circulation. Wonder what book he's talking about. Anybody know? Hit me up. Therefore, or maybe he'll tell us. Therefore, what we are stating here has complete confirmation. Extraterrestrial ships are not flying saucers, but flying spheres. These metallic spheres mimic planetary rotation. Their rotating motion is from left to right, and when slow, makes them ascend or descend. In the center of the sphere is something that in the shape and function resembles fins, or trowels in the form of a fan. That absorbs the cosmic ether, which, conducted by a tube, is then burned by means of a ray of light. This is not similar to the spark ignition system that we use. By clairvoyant observation, one sees that it resembles a small wheel similar to emery wheels that we use in order to sharpen steel objects. The ray that burns the ether is produced from the small stone that turns incessantly. This produces the inexhaustible fuel that derives the spheres. The burning of the cosmic ether and its jet expulsion brings about two continuous movements of the ship, one revolving and one propelling. In addition, the jet expulsion has a third use. It serves as a rudder for the ship. With a slight downward movement, the sphere begins to ascend. With the upward movement of the tail rudder, the sphere inclines downward and descends. Likewise, in order to turn left or right, the jet expulsion allows the sphere to be maneuvered. So the cosmic ether, conducted by a tube, burned and producing the external rotation of the sphere, also warms it, producing enough heat to project the small protect the small pilots, not project them, excuse me, thus providing the capability of traveling amidst great planetary cold without the accumulation of ice or other gases that are found in the firmament. The sphere rotates upon its axis, and the cabin where the small pilots are accommodated is fixed to this axis. Therefore, it is stable regardless of rapid external maneuvers. The cabin contains two small dials. One indicates direction and the other speed. They adjust the jet expulsion by means of a small handle and the speed by means of a button or accelerator they control with their foot. This accelerator goes in and out and can be maintained on a certain point in order to keep consistent speed. In order to land on Earth, a fan opens underneath. This fan picks up from the landing field a very fine soil in the shape of a cone, and smoothly lands upon it. The resumption of the rotating motion is enough in order for it to quickly take off. When on land, the sphere maintains a reserve of pressurized ether that brings about the movement when it takes off. Until that movement, the rotating movement is what prevents the sphere from falling over. Otherwise, the rotating ship would crash against the ground. Don't you like this? The semantics of flying saucers. It's pretty rad, right? The speed of the craft is relative to the intensity of the jet expulsion. Movement from right to left is similar to what is accomplished by helicopters. The sphere can remain fixed at a given point, just like helicopters. The most powerful fuel that exists in the universe is ether. Ether, or ether, is found everywhere. Therefore, these cosmic ships have discovered the secret of perpetual motion that our wise people have always looked for. When the sphere turns upon its axis, it introduces the ether. When the ether is burned, it produces force, and within its jet expulsion, it continuously gives movement to the sphere, or rather, it rotates and impels it in the same time. Thus, the movement is continuous. This indicates the airplanes propelled by gasoline will soon be obsolete, since gasoline as a fuel is very heavy, dangerous, and it occupies much space. All of this will pass and will be in the museums of antiquities. Therefore, the little wings will soon be unfashionable. We will need to fly like the heavenly spheres. The rotating motion, as we said, is controllable. That is to say, it increases or decreases according to the intensity of the jet expulsion. There are small and big spheres and capable of transporting enormous crews. The inhabitants of our planet Earth are not capable of traveling to other planets. However, the men children from other planets will come to civilize us because we are savages. In order to conclude the study of flying spheres, I must say to the men of science that this is not a more or less pompous nor more or less vague theory. This is a palpitating reality. The 4 collaborators who investigated these ships were inside of them and conversed with small pilots. Therefore, this study is neither a theory nor a hypothesis, nor is it an opinion. It is reality. The scientists can perform the same experiments if they learned how to project themselves in their astral bodies. In our world, many people believe that flying saucers are instruments of destruction or secret weapons invented by the Russians, and those machines are possibly moved by radar or other similar inventions. But there is nothing of that sort. These are not machines of destruction like those invented by Earthlings. These are perfect ships that will bring civilization to us, because we are not civilized. We are anthropophagy with tuxedos. Pophagi. Anthropophagy, prophagi, with tuxedos. In Russia, there is a wise person who, by means of radio waves, has managed to communicate with these pilots. Really? This wise person is helped by Aun Weor, or Samael, or I guess Aun Weor, the Weor of Russia, who is one of the 7 Weors of the Holy Gnostic Church. Our brother Sir Weor of the United States does not ignore this either. This scientist who wants to investigate the flying spheres must study this book minutely. Let them work on the development of their own internal or occult powers, by means of which they will triumphantly and victoriously be able to enter into the amphitheater of cosmic science. When the pilots of those flying spheres settle their dwelling on Earth, they will illuminate us. And then indeed there will be splendors and wisdom on the earth. They are wise and holy at the same time. They are small in stature and have rosy faces like the aurora. Their mission will be to illuminate the future humanity of Aquarius. The report given by Mr. Lapides, affirming that, or Lapides, I don't know how to pronounce that, affirming that the flying saucers are a secret weapon of the United States is not true. These are mere suppositions or news in order to flatter certain readers. Also, the information provided by Mr. Echeverria Marquez, based on the English document of a British official's property, wanting to explain the mystery of the flying saucers, is also a simple supposition. All of this information is just trying to claim an invention that is not from our planet, and in order to provide flattering news to thousands of readers. If the flying saucers were secret weapons, why would they fly over cities of little importance, over the fields, and avoid encounters with other airplanes, causing unexpected movements among them, flying calmly and short in view of thousands of spectators? Like it or not, the stubborn ones of the 20th century are going to have to be convinced that the flying saucers are ships from other planets and piloted by human beings million times wiser than the jackasses with frock coats, eyeglasses, and glass tumblers of our heartbroken Earth. It was around the year 1950 when we spoke for the first time about flying discs. In that year, we were emphatically affirmed that such flying discs are indeed spaceships maneuvered by inhabitants of other planets. And that year, many laughed at our affirmations, yet many events have provided evidence to support us. Since in the United States there is a scientific department solely dedicated to the investigation of these spaceships. The law of accidents also affected those ships, thus several have clashed or violently exploded in the air. The United States has in their hands fragments of some of those ships. In this book, we do not intend to demonstrate the reality of the interplanetary ships, since that reality is already totally demonstrated. Now, we only want to extend the information that we gave to humanity in the year 1950. What is he saying? We, like he's one of them. In this book, we do not intend to demonstrate the reality of the interplanetary ships, since that reality is already totally demonstrated. Now, we only want to extend the information that we gave to humanity in the year 1950, in the first edition of our book, The Perfect Matrimony. The spaceships have their history and their traditions. Indeed, those were created by angels, archangels, seraphim, etc., who have their own bodies of flesh and bone. Many cosmic traditions mention Saint Venama and his cosmic navigation system. Saint Venama is an angel with a body of flesh and bone. Saint Venama was born on the planet Soort, where he, that's S-O-O-R-T, where he dedicated himself to investigate the law of falling. Lo and behold, beloved reader, the formulation of Saint Venama gave to this cosmic law. And here it is. Everything existing in the world falls to the bottom. The bottom for any part of the universe is its nearest stability. This stability is the place or point which all the lines of force arriving from all directions converge. The centers of all suns and of all planets of our universe are such points of stability. They are the lowest points of those regions of space upon which forces from all directions of that part of the universe definitely tend towards. And where they are concentrated in these points is also concentrated the equilibrium that enables suns and planets to maintain their position. So it's kind of like that, that thing when you're a kid, you put the quarter in and it goes around and around and around to the center. I think that's what he's talking about. And this formulation of his Saint Venama said further, everything dropped into space, wherever it may be, tends to fall on one sun or another, or on one planet or another, in accordance to the sun or planet belonging to that part of space. Each sun or planet is the stability or bottom for that space. Having verified his deep investigations, Saint Venama knew how to use that cosmic particularly for the locomotion of spaceships. The spaceships designed by Saint Venama were based on the principle of the law of falling. The only serious problem was related to the planetary atmospheres, since they do not allow objects in space to fall straight. Saint Venama managed to solve that problem easily, thus constructing wonderful spaceships. We do not intend in this book to thoroughly explain all the mechanisms of those ships, because besides being too complicated, it would be too tiring for the reader. Not me, I want to hear about it. Under the direction of Archangel Adosia, the inspection approved and blessed the works of Saint Venama. The ships of Saint Venama were moved by the magnetic force of the planets, and very fast. Nevertheless, the most serious problem appeared when the ships approached the planet or sun in space, since a great deal of complicated maneuvering was necessary to avoid a catastrophe. Few were the human angels who could drive those ships. It was very difficult to steer the ships of Saint Venama. Thus, every day great demands were made upon the technicians who had to drive these ships. Nevertheless, the system of Saint Venama was a technical revolution for its time, and gradually completely displaced all the previous systems. After many years of cosmic activity, the system of Saint Venama was entirely superseded by the revolutionary system of the Archangel Heraton. This archangel is a true man in the most complete sense of the word, and has a body of flesh and bone like any person. The wonderful experiments of Mr. Heraton began under the supervision of a great wise man known in all the cosmos with the name of Adosia. This wise man is also a gentleman who already acquired the archangel degree. Modern spaceships are based on the works of Archangel Heraton. All the technician functionalism of these ships is performed upon the basis of perpetual motion. However, since this is not a mechanical text and we are not mechanics either, we abstain from describing the mechanics of these spaceships. Millions of spaceships are numerous as sands of the sea, travel throughout the infinite outer space. Cargo spaceships are gigantic and carry within the gigantic belly small spaceships that they use in order to descend to planets. Like Han Solo, right? This is similar to the great cargo boats that carry on board small boats that are used in order to disembark on the shores. Any mature humanity of the cosmos has the absolute right to receive these spaceships. Normally, the elder brothers help the younger ones. Thus, when a given humanity reaches an age similar to ours, they receive a visit from other planetary humanities. Then the elder brothers initiate the younger ones in cosmic travel, give them some of the spaceships, and teach them how to construct them. In the times of Atlantis, spaceships normally landed in the airports of the city of Samleos. At that time, the inhabitants of other planets visited the Atlantean kings and coexisted with them in their palaces. When humanity became morally corrupted, then the elder brother humanities from the other planets stopped visiting us. In these times of the bankruptcy of all spiritual values, we are again to be helped by our elder brothers from other planets. Now we need extra help because we have failed and are on the brink of a great cataclysm. This terrestrial humanity has reached maximum of corruption. Thus the aid of our elder brethren is urgently needed. Already several inhabitants of the earth have been taken on a promenade to other planets of the infinite space. In the Republic of Mexico, 2 men were taken to Venus. One is a resident of Jalisco, and the other lives in the capital city of Mexico. In the next chapter, we will talk about the latter. We know that in Brazil is another gentleman who was taken to Mars. There is not the slightest doubt that all of us can visit other planets of outer space. We are on the eve of a great cosmic cataclysm and will be warned before the great catastrophe. The elder brother humanities from other planets will try to save us and will officially enter our major cities to announce the danger that awaits us. However, if we continue with atomic explosions and vices and all types of perversities and wars, the catastrophe will be inevitable. It is good to know that a group of Tibetan lamas already have some of those spaceships. They receive them from our brothers from other planets and have them very well stored in the certain secret places in the Himalayas. Some citizens from other planets already walk the streets of our cities. Ooh. Anyways, they dress as any fellow countryman and nobody recognizes them. They study our languages, traditions, and customs in order to help us. We are going to be helped on a great scale. We urgently need such help because we have totally failed. Many spaceships now land in the jungles of Brazil, southern Argentina, etc., and other places where they have secret airports. Some of their cosmic crew remain with us. Those who think that the visitors from those humanities from other planets are trying to destroy us are mistaken. Once again, those who suspect perversity from our visitor brethren are mistaken. It is clear that they have weapons with which they can paralyze men and machines. It is logical that they are invulnerable because they are very well armed and protected. If they wanted to dominate this planet, again, they could do it in seconds, since they have special weapons in order to do so. Likewise, they could destroy this planet to scatter it into pieces, but indeed this is not what they want. They are not destructive. They respect life. They are not like the perverse earthlings. Our brethren visitors only want to help us. Thus each and every one of us inhabitants of the earth must prepare to receive them. At this moment, inhabitants of Mars, Venus, Mercury, etc. live on all the great cities of the world. They study our language and customs in order to help us. Spaceships land in isolated places, and sometimes they leave some of their crew from other planets, who dress as anyone else walking on the streets of New York, Paris, London, etc., without anybody knowing about them, since they are very similar to us in their physical appearance, even though many of them are more beautiful and perfect. The fantasies of many authors who imagine the inhabitants of other planets have different features from the human beings of the earth are absurd. The physical features and forms of the physical body of all humans of the cosmos are always the same. I don't know. I think I might stop here. But the next chapter is chapter 8, A Mexican Traveled to Venus. How cool, if this is true, this would be pretty rad, don't you think? I mean, not the whole Earth getting destroyed and everything, but I don't know. If it's a short chapter, I might read it. There's only let's see. I'm more than halfway through this book. I don't know. I'm going to think about it while we take a real... Yeah, I might read this next chapter. This one's called A Mexican Traveled to Venus. And thanks for you guys that are staying up with me here. I see a big shout out over there in Europe. Whoever you are, thanks for listening. Here in Mexico City, we know a man who traveled to the planet Venus. We had the high honor of personally visiting meeting Salvador Villanueva Medina. Salvador is not at all fictional or unbalanced. Salvador has been examined by psychiatrists, and they have reached the conclusion that he is a mentally normal, balanced man. Neither does Salvador make a living from his extraordinary adventure or on the book that he wrote entitled I Was on the Planet Venus. Okay. Maybe he just gives it away for free. I don't know. One winter night, we arrived at the door of his house. We were lucky enough to have been welcomed by him. His family was watching TV. Yet, in a very amiable manner, they turned off the television and left us alone with him in their living room. This gentleman is a mechanic by profession. He fixes cars. This is what he does for a living. We ourselves have been in his body shop watching him work. He is practical, 100%. We keep the address of this gentleman private, since we do not have authorization to give it to the public. Thank God for that, right? He is a very sincere and kind man. He is not an occultist or a spiritualist or anything of that sort. He does not boast of being a wise person, and in spite of having lived a most extraordinary cosmic adventure, indeed, he is not proud about it. We limit ourselves to two things. First, to give testimony that he is an absolutely prudent man dedicated to his work and his family. Second, that indeed this man happened to experience a formidable adventure, but he does not make a living from it. Salvador Villanueva Medina narrated what happened to him, and this has brought him many sufferings. Because, as always, the loafers, the skeptics, the stupid idiots have made a mockery of him. Beyond any doubt, Salvador was on Venus, and he accomplished his duty of informing this to his fellow men. Although they make fun of him, whosoever laughs at what he does does not know is an ignoramus who walks on the path of idiocy. We do not intend in this book to narrate in detail what happened to this man. We only want to talk about it in synthesis, and that is all. In the month of August of the year of 1953, this man was on the planet Venus. His name is Salvador Villanueva Medina. I hope I said that right, buddy. I'm sorry. Said event happened unexpectedly. On the highway of Laredo in Mexico, he was driving a rental car taking an American couple to the United States. He drove about 484 kilometers when the car broke down. The gringos left the car and went in search of a tow truck to take the car to the nearest town in order to repair it. This is when his adventure began. Salvador went underneath the car to try to repair it. Suddenly, he heard some steps on the sandy roadside, and somebody asked him in perfect Spanish what happened to his car. Salvador kept silent, and when he came out from underneath the car, he found himself before a strangely dressed man whose stature measured about 1 meter, more or less 20 centimeters. That's about 3.5 feet. The body of this man was of an extraordinary perfection, his skin white like the ermine, and his entire appearance was filled with beauty. What called Salvador's attention more than the unusual uniform and mysterious shining belt with perforations from which strange light shone? I guess it was the skin that got his attention. The man had long hair and wore a very special metallic helmet. Sounds like Thor. The words spoken between them at the moment were few. Salvador limited himself to ask this mysterious personage if he was a pilot or something. The person answered that his airplane, as we earthlings name our flying ships, was a short distance away. Thus, after saying these words, the strange person continuously left, and soon he went towards the mountain. Salvador told us that after this event, he decided to sleep calmly within his car. The most interesting moment happened later when Salvador was sleeping. Strong knocks on the window of the car surprisingly awakened him. Without thinking too much about it, Salvador opened the door of his car. Then his surprise became to astonishment when he saw the same person accompanied by another who had the same aspect and the same suit. Salvador invited them to enter his car. Once inside, when stretching his right arm over them with the intention of helping to close the door, he momentarily felt an electrical current that paralyzed his arm. The conversation inside the car was wonderful. They declared to Salvador that they came from the planet Venus and gave a lot of information about this planet. They said that on Venus, the highways endlessly extend with many crossing arterial roads, which are immediately below their highway levels in order to avoid accidents. On Venus, the vehicles do not consume vegetal or mineral fuels because they are a detriment for organisms. The Venusians use solar energy to power their vehicles. At first, Salvador did not believe them, and even became offended, thinking that these gentlemen were making fun of him. Thus, Salvador even said to them that only the planet Earth had inhabitants, and that he had learned this through the affirmations of the wise men from the earth. They then asked Salvador the following questions. What makes them to think in such a manner? Perhaps the deficient methods they utilize in order to make their calculations. It is not perhaps too much pretension to think that they are the only beings who populate the universe. These questions were already very unusual for Salvador, and in addition the color of those very white faces, their expressive eyes, their strange voice, their strange helmets, their mysterious belts, made him think very much. To narrate the conversation that Salvador had with the Venusians would be too long. In short, they told him how life was on the planet Venus, how they lived, what they ate, their cities, how their cities were, their streets, etc. They also removed him all doubts by explaining to him that they could turn a detrimental thing into a beneficial thing, and artificially make their climate his atmospheres. So, with those conditions, if Venus were uninhabitable, they could make it inhabitable because their scientific advances allow them to do it. However, it is clear that Venus is perfectly inhabitable. Those Venusians informed Salvador widely about life on Venus. They dissipated his doubts by explaining to him that on Venus, by means of special scientific systems, they created an artificial, benign, and uniform climate, thus turning their world into a delectable dwelling. Dawn was arriving, so in a very amiable manner the Venusians invited Salvador to accompany them to the planet Venus. Thus Salvador left the car and followed these mysterious men. Certainly, I probably would too. Certainly after a while, walking among the mountains, Salvador paused before the majestic spaceship. It was majestic and imposing flattened sphere that leaned upon three supports that formed a triangle. Salvador stated that the construction of the ship was impressive and gave the impressions of being a great fort. Salvador entered the ship. The doors were closed, and they left for planet Venus. This is crazy, man. Let's see. Okay. Everything that Salvador saw on Venus was extraordinary. The Venusian civilization is formidable. On Venus, civilization has arrived at its peak. Their money is not needed. Each citizen works 2 hours a day, and in exchange, one has the right to do everything a human being needs for life, namely transport, food, clothes, vacations, science, etc. Everything belongs to everybody. If one needs a car, one takes it, drives it, and leaves it in its parking lot. If one is hungry, one eats at any hotel and pays nothing for it. Because since everybody works, everybody has the right to everything. If one needs to dress, one asks for a suit in a store and does not pay anything for it. Because since everybody works, everybody has the right to get dressed. Well, that's communism right there. Communism. Excuse me. On the planet Venus, cars are powered by solar energy. On their world, they have a single sea, but it is 3 times deeper than ours. Their main nourishment is taken from the sea, so they take from the sea all the necessary elements to build their buildings, make clothes, vehicles, and 60% or more of their food. Their orchards are upon the roofs of their houses and buildings. They said that their ships can either be in the air or in the water, and that in deep sea are gigantic factories which are in charge of scientifically selecting and taking advantage of the fish for the nutrition. So, on Venus, fish and fruits constitute their basic food. On Venus, there are no governments, nor mother countries, since the entire planet is their mother country, and only the wise men direct and advise them. I asked Salvador about religious matters, and the answer was that on Venus religions do not exist, since each citizen behaves on the street as if they were within a temple. Each person on Venus considers that the temples exist within us. Cool. The sidewalks of the streets in the cities of Venus are not still because they are made of metallic bands that are in constant movement, thus saving the effort to the pedestrians. The flow of their streets, that is so easy. The center of their avenues has metallic belts that collect the force of the sun with which their cars are propelled. Thus, people never walk on the central flows of their street. So on Venus, everything belongs to everybody, and the entire Venusian family is a great family. Children are born in a special maternity rooms, and they are educated and raised in collective homes. When a child is born, they stamp a mark on his foot. That mark indicates the child's origin and faculties. Thus, according to this mark, the child is educated in the collective home. When the person reaches maturity, he passes to occupy the place in society that corresponds to him. So, on Venus, children are not wandering on the streets. The government manages them until they reach a suitable age to be classified according to their physical and mental qualities. I thought it just said there's no government. And assigned to whatever place they are needed. In these conditions, private families do not exist. Everybody in Venus belongs to a single united family. There is no hunger, or war, or social classes. There only reigns wisdom and love. For 5 days he lived on planet Venus, and returned to Earth after having verified the reality of all the affirmations made by the Venusians. The Venusian civilization is 1,000,000 times more advanced than ours. Proud Earthlings. Salvador narrated what he saw. We limit ourselves to comment about it. On the planet, he found 2 French residents, twins, and veteran brothers of World War II. They were also transported to Venus, and they begged and cried to the Venusians to not take them back to Earth, because they lived happily. The Venusians affirm that some of them are here on our planet Earth dressed as any citizen in order to study the humanity of our planet. They stated that many thousands of years ago, they lived in the historical stage that we Earthlings are passing through now. They also knew that the wars and the astute political leaders, until brotherhood was born. Nowadays, they do not have flags. They have made of their world a single mother country, and are governed by wise people who limit themselves to advise them with wisdom and love. Okay, so that's their government. Salvador came back to the planet Earth. He brought back in order for him to inform the inhabitants of the Earth that Venus is inhabited. Phillips Laboratories analyzed the soil and plants in the place where Salvador saw the spaceship, and they found a strange molecular and atomic disorder. The North American scientist George Animsky, who met some Venusians in the desert of Nevada, came in contact with Salvador and gave a lecture about the subject in the theater Insurgentes of Mexico. Great German scientists investigated the land where Salvador found the spaceship, and the outcome of their investigations was the same as Phillips. Another great scientist came from the place of the kings of England in order to investigate the case, and the conclusions were the same as Phillips. So the German Commission of Scientists, interested in this matter, visited Salvador and studied the region of the events. Thus, there are no doubt about it. However, the imbeciles will continue to laugh, as always, because they are imbeciles. In these difficult times in which we live, we will be helped by the inhabitants of other planets. It is necessary for us to learn how to telepathically communicate with them, Jesus said. Ask, and it shall be given. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. Matthew 7:7. All of us can visit other planets if we know how to ask. Gnostics must develop telepathy. Gnostics must go to the fields, to the deepest forest, and peacefully and in deep meditation, telepathically enter into communication with Venusians, Mercurians, or Martians, and request to be taken to Venus, Mars, or Mercury. In this peace of the mountains, or in a solitary beach, any day we can have the happiness that Salvador, Villanova, Medina had. Each of us can be taken to Venus, or to other planets. The system to communicate with those human angels is telepathy. Our universal Christian Gnostic movement have formidable systems in this order to develop telepathy. Whosoever wants to visit another planet must not drink alcohol, smoke, or have any vice. Our international Gnostic missionary, J.A.B., was visited by an interplanetary spaceship during a retreat in the Summum Supremum Sanctorium. Yes, the thought waves of the supplicant travel to the planet Venus in a few seconds, and if we are worthy and deserving, we can receive an answer. Thus, any given day, in the solitude of the fields, we can have the happiness of seeing a spaceship landing near us, and then be taken by Mercurians, Martians, etc. Since they are true humans with bodies of flesh and bones, humans with souls of angels, human angels. Damn, So I can't go to Venus because I don't drink, but I do smoke. I guess I got to quit smoking so I can go visit these other planets. Man, that's pretty crazy. What if all this is true, though? The pluralized I. These chapters are getting smaller and smaller. There is energy that is free in its movement, and there is static energy. The I is a knot that must be united, or untied, sorry. The I is static energy. The universal spirit of life is energy that is free in movement. The spirit is not the I. The soul is not the I. The physical body is not the I. It is necessary to know that the I is the Satan of which the Bible speaks. The I is Ahriman of the Persians. The I is a handful of memories, desires, passions, hungers, fears, etc. A so-called superior I does not exist. Indeed, our real being is beyond any type of I. Our real being is the being, and nothing but that, the being. The soul is the being, the spirit is the being, but the I is not the soul or the spirit. The I is the devil, and that is all. The I exists in a pluralized manner. With this, we mean that the I is a legion of devils. Just as water is made up of many drops, just as a flame has many sparks, likewise the I is made up of many small eyes. Each desire is personified by a small I. Each appetite is personified by another small I. The 7 capital sins are personified by 7 eyes, 1 for each capital sin, 7 for the 7 capital sins. All vices, passions, and evilness are personified by small eyes that in their conjunction constitute the I, or reincorporating ego. What reincorporates is the I. The I reincorporates in order to satisfy desires to pay karma. The I is the origin of pain. The I, me, myself, and I. The I is the origin of all our evilness. When the I is reduced to dust, what remains within us is the soul. Indeed, the nature of the soul is happiness. The soul is happiness. To seek outside of happiness is absolutely absurd, since happiness comes to us when the I has died. Therefore, while the pluralized I continues to exist, there can be no happiness. In life there are pleasant hours and enjoyments. Nevertheless, happiness cannot exist as long as the I is not dissolved. When the I is reduced to dust, we can reincarnate on more advanced planets in order to work on the realization of our inner self. The dissolution of the I brings true freedom. The Venusians are truly happy because they already annihilated the I. They do not have I. The Venusians do not need money because they do not have anxieties for accumulation. Since they do not desire anything, they do not have greed. They are satisfied with their daily bread. That kind of consciousness is possessed by beings who no longer have the I. Authorities are not necessary in Venus because there is no violence. Only the I is violent. Government is not necessary in Venus because each citizen knows how to be governed by itself. When the I has been annihilated, each citizen becomes governed by itself. Then who wants to govern others? Nobody. On Venus, private families do not exist. All the Venusians form a single family. This is only possible thanks to the fact that they already annihilated the horrible pluralized I. This is I is what we call my family, my house, my property, my lust, my resentments, my desires, my passions, my memories, etc. The I continues in our descendants. The I is the race, the nation, my social class, my money, my family, my inheritance. The I is the subconscious. When the I is annihilated, the subconscious becomes consciousness. We need to annihilate the I in order to transform the subconsciousness into consciousness. Only by annihilating the I can the subconsciousness become consciousness. When the subconscious becomes consciousness, the problem of astral projection has been resolved. When the subconsciousness becomes consciousness, we no longer need to worry about astral projection, because while the physical body sleeps, we live in an absolutely conscious manner with the internal worlds. At the present time, humanity is 97% subconscious and only 3% conscious. We need to become conscious 100%. The inhabitants of Venus are 100% totally conscious. The humanity of Venus annihilated the I. Indeed, the I can only be annihilated by means of rigorous creative comprehension. We need to perform a self-dissection of the I, with the scalpel of the self-criticism. Instead of criticizing others, we must criticize ourselves. Practical life is a full-length mirror, where we can see ourselves as we really are. When the mind is in a state of alert perception while coexisting with the neighbor, we can then easily discover our defects because they spontaneously arise. Our defects emerge in an astounding manner, while in relation with the neighbors, with our friends, with our fellow workers, with our spouse, with our children, with our acquaintances, etc. Thus, if we are alert and vigilant as watchmen in the time of war, it is clearly logical that we can see our defects as they really are. Self-discovery exists while coexisting with others. If we are in the state of alert perception, any discovered defect must be intellectually analyzed. Nonetheless, the intellect is not everything. The intellect is only a fraction of the mind. We need to delve, we need to explore. The subconscious more deeply in order to discover the inner roots of our defects. Yet only through very deep meditation can we explore the subconscious. Thus, when we have comprehended a defect completely, the energetic I that personifies it can be disintegrated. Thus, this is how we die from moment to moment. We need a mystical death. We need the death of the I. Let us remember that each one of us carries a legion of devils within us. Yes, the I is a legion of devils. The body of desires exists within each person, and within the body of desires exists the pluralized I. The pluralized I miserably squanders the essence, that is to say, the raw matter, the substance of the soul. The I squanders the precious psychic essence in atomic explosions of anger, greed, lust, pride, laziness, gluttony, etc. When the I is dead, the essence is accumulated and becomes the soul. We need the death of the I. We need only that which is happiness to live within us, that which we are called soul. When the I dies, karma ends, and in fact, we become free. The inner contradictions of each person are due to the pluralized I. For example, I'm going to read the newspaper, says an I in an intellectual center. I do not want to read. What I want is to ride a bicycle, says another I in the motion center. I love that woman. I adore her, says an I in the center of emotions. I do not love her. What I want is money, says another I in the mental center. To the devil with these preoccupations. What I want is to eat, says the I of gluttony, through the digestive system. And I want to eat a lot, says the I of greed. I swear to be faithful to Gnosis, says the mystical I. To the devil with Gnosis, furiously exclaims the intellectual I. It is better to get money, says the I of greediness. And I will affiliate myself to another school better than Gnosis, says the I of curiosity. Thus, this is how we do not have individuality. Yes, we are not individualized because we are a legion of devils. Thus, when the I is dissolved, individuality, that is to say, the individual soul, is the only thing that remains within us. The Venusians are true sacred individuals because they do not have I. The Venusians are truly perfect human beings. We earthlings are intellectual animals because we do not have authentic individuality. We see too many people swearing fidelity to Gnosis, giving an oath before the altar, and thereafter in time they go to another school and declare themselves enemies of Gnosis. This is because they do not have individuality. The I that in a given moment was enthusiastic about Gnosis is later displaced by another I that detests Gnosis. Present human beings cannot have continuity. What is he saying? Cannot have continuity. Continuity in their purposes because they do not have individuality. There are legions of devils, and each devil has its own criteria, ideas, opinions, etc. The present human being is a non-realized being. We still do not possess the being. Only the being can grant us true individuality. And I think, it's 1 o'clock, right? So I think I might leave it there. I don't know. Let me see what I got left here. Let's see. Chapter 10, a jupiterian visitor. Somebody from Jupiter. That's pretty cool. The Gnostic movement. The extraterrestrials' mission. Answers about extraterrestrials. The consequences of the comet Condor. It's a pretty rad book, I'm going to say. You know what? This thing, I don't know who's willing to go the distance, because this thing really only has let's see where am I at here. It actually ends. Page 80, and I am on page 50. Well, I'm recording this, so I'm going to put it on the podcast, probably put it up on YouTube. But if you guys want to keep going, I'm just going to finish the book, because that's not a lot of pages, actually. All right, so here's chapter 10, a Jupiterian visitor. The news that arrives from all over the world assures that the cosmic ships land in different places on Earth. What bothers the intellectual loafers the most is to not be able to capture one of those ships. With crew and everything, we are absolutely sure that the cannibals from Africa and the Amazon also felt very annoyed when they could not manage to capture an explorer. Regarding concrete facts about flying saucers, people want to proceed like cannibals. However, it is clear that the crews of those cosmic ships who know human savagery very well are not willing to let themselves be ensnared, since they know very well the fortune that awaits them. That is, the intellectual loafers would make them prisoners. The ships would be seized and used for war. Yes, the crews of those cosmic ships are not willing to serve as guinea pigs. Therefore, before letting themselves be trapped, similar to the explorers from the white race that flew past the tribes of cannibals, they prefer, with good reason, to disappear within infinite space. We are stating something that may hurt the intellectual loafers very much, since they love themselves too much, boasting about themselves as super-civilized. Even in their depths they are truly nothing but savages dressed in modern style. In Brazil, near Parana, a cosmic ship landed before the presence of a famous scientist, whose last name is Craspedion. The captain of the ship invited the mentioned scientist to visit his ship. The mentioned scientist not only came to know the interior of the ship, but also its crew. Okay, the captain of the ship said that he came from a satellite, a moon, of the planet Jupiter. He spoke perfect Spanish and promised the mentioned scientist to visit his home and return. When Mr. Craspedon wanted to give his home address to the captain, he replied that it was not necessary. When refusing, the captain said, "We know perfectly well how to find you on Earth." 6 months later, on a Sunday, the scientist, withdrawn in the study room of his house, was suddenly interrupted by his wife, who informed him that at the door of his house was a man who wished to speak with him. She said that man was carrying a Bible between his hands and insisted on giving explanations about it. Mr. Craspedion commanded his wife to dismiss the visitor and to close the door. Moments later, the lady returned and informed her husband that the visitor did not want to go away and insisted on speaking to him. A little sour-faced, the scientist resolved to leave his study and go to the door in order to take care of the visitor. Great was his surprise when he found himself face to face with the captain of the cosmic ship who he had met 6 months earlier. Mr. Kraspedon welcomed the visitor and invited him to come inside the living room of his house. Soon their conversation began. The mentioned scientist wanted to examine intellectual capacities of the jupiterian, placing him, so to say, in a very difficult position by means of complicated questions about the Bible. The visitor demonstrated his possession of a most illuminated intelligence, since he knew even the deepest roots of Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. Thus he knew how to give the sacred scriptures highly scientific, deeply philosophical, extraordinarily artistic, and transcendentally mystical interpretations. After the interview, there were 2 more interviews in different places of the city, to which the mentioned scientist attended, accompanied by a professor of physics and mathematics. The teachings that the jupiterian gave on the subject of astronomy were indeed formidable. All of that knowledge is transcendental. Mr. Kraspedon, as a serious scientist, he is not a charlatan. Thus he resolved to condense all of the knowledge that the jupiterian gave him in a precious book, written in Portuguese and entitled Flying Discs. Well, I hope they got an English version of that. The jupiterian warned that the atomic explosions are altering the superior layer of the terrestrial atmosphere. This layer is the supreme filter that alters and disarranges the solar rays, transforming them to light and heat. The jupiterian said that if atomic scientists continue with their nuclear blasts, the day would arrive in which the supreme filter would be incapable of disarranging and altering the solar rays into light and heat. Then we would see the sun black as a sackcloth of hair, the moon red as blood, and a furious red color upon the face of the earth. The jupiterian warned that when the superior layer of the terrestrial atmosphere that serves as support for life on Earth becomes disturbed, great earthquakes would occur and the cities would fall to the ground, like castles made of cards turned into dust. The jupiterian gave an alert that the navigators of outer space, who often visit the Earth, are already seeing the superior layer of the terrestrial atmosphere with a clearly altered process and without the brightness and splendor of other times. The jupiterian said that atomic radiation from the thermonuclear war will saturate the water that we drink, the harvests whereupon we maintain ourselves, the clouds that bring us the rains, etc. The jupiterian warned that the atomic radiation will damage the phosphorus in the brain of human beings, and everywhere we will see dantesque scenes in the streets, hospitals full of people, multiplication of cancer and leukemia, millions and millions of dead, hunger, and desperation. Time is passing now. The atomic blasts proceed underground, as much in Russia as in the United States. France and China continue in making atomic explosions in the atmosphere, and newspapers from the entire world bring news of sudden earthquakes, either in Chile or El Salvador, now in Iraq, Japan, etc. We are facing concrete facts that are impossible to deny. Envious people will be bothered very much by the narration about the jupiterian and Mr. Kraspedon. Thus, it would not be very strange to us for them to send against us all their satires based on their stupid skepticism, similar to the satires of those who mocked Pasteur, Galileo, Edison, etc. What really bothers the envious people is to not have the opportunity that Mr. Kraspedon had. We are sure that if the same opportunity were granted unto these envious people, they would abuse it, inevitably capturing or killing the visitors from the infinite cosmos. Nevertheless, cannibals are cannibals, and the inhabitants of other planets know very well how to protect themselves from them, thus disappearing into outer space before the barbarian hordes of earthlings can capture them. The Gnostic movement, 1964. Earthlings have directed themselves toward the conquest of outer space, and they do not care at all about flying saucers or spiritual matters. If we compare the flying saucers with the space rockets, the rockets are grotesque and ridiculous nonetheless, and Russians and the gringos want to conquer the moon, and it is clear that they will land on the moon with them. What is most lamentable of all this is the aggressive instinct of the current terrestrial humanity. Whoever dominates the moon will want to turn it into an armed military platform with atomic potential. They have not landed on the moon as of 1964. Yet, like the Tyrians and Trojans, enemies and the Aeneid, they are already talking about orbital nuclear missiles in order to destroy defenseless cities. Yet this is the regrettable state of the current terrestrial humanity. The inventor of the hydrogen bomb still does not know the damage that he caused to humanity. If one of those hydrogen bombs exploded in the superior zones of the atmosphere, where there is a deposit of pure hydrogen, then the entire atmosphere of the earth would burn, fulfilling the prophecy uttered by the apostle Peter in his second epistle that states the following: "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. The earth also, and the works that are therein shall be burned up." 2 Peter chapter 3, verse 10. It is clear that before this could happen, before any wacky earthling could conceive the sick idea of making this detrimental experiment with a hydrogen bomb, before it could explode in the superior zones of the atmospheres amidst the pure terrestrial hydrogen, the deposit of living universal hydrogen, we can be sure that they, the navigators of infinite space, would make the planet Earth explode into pieces, so the humanities of other planets of the solar systems will not have to undergo the consequences of the explosion of our terrestrial hydrogen. Yes, such a terrestrial catastrophe would frightfully affect other planets of the solar system. Thus, before this could happen, they, the navigators of the sidereal space, would be forced with deep pain to destroy this planet, making it to fly into pieces, because it is not right that other planetary humanities should suffer the consequences of the madness of earthlings. At the moment, the inhabitants of Earth are full of pride and arrogance. The perverse earthlings have raised the Tower of Babel, with which they think to conquer outer space. Thus the inhabitants of the other planets of the solar system already have orders to defend themselves. Space rockets will eventually land on the moon. Later on, these earthlings perversely and arrogantly will launch themselves to Mars. By logical deduction, the encounter with humanities of other planets is totally inevitable. Thus, this failed and degenerated root race has no alternative but to transform themselves to perish. Damn, it's pretty sad. The universal Gnostic movements want to forge groups of men and women of goodwill in order to welcome our brothers and sisters from space. Millions of earthlings filled with pride, arrogance, and perversity believe only in their space rockets and their weapons of mass destruction. Those hordes of learned ignoramuses are surrendering themselves to all the vices of the earth, and they laugh at everything that smells of flying saucers. We, the Gnostic people, do not in any way accept the antichrists of false science. Neither can we even slightly think that the infinite space can be conquered without having previously conquered ourselves. It is completely absurd to suppose that the barbarian hordes of earthlings can conquer other planets and enslave superior planetary humanities. The Gnostic people do not accept the perversity of the intellectual loafers. Thus they have resolved to organize an army for world salvation with men and women of goodwill who are willing to joyfully welcome our brothers and sisters from sidereal space. The universal Gnostic movements will be established everywhere, in different places on Earth, true mystical cynicals conducive to the study of cosmic laws, in order to prepare people so they can welcome our brothers and sisters from space. Yes, the Gnostic movements comprehend the necessity of cosmic ships in order to travel throughout the infinite. Nevertheless, we do not believe that the way of perversity, pride, and rockets is the correct way. The infinite cosmos is sacred. It is governed by divine laws that cannot be broken with impunity without receiving the disastrous consequences. We, the Gnostics, are willing to study the laws of eternal space with all humanity, and at the feet of our brothers and sisters. from space, we know that this is the precise way that can allow us to navigate in true cosmic ships through the infinite space. Now we need to be prepared by finishing with all our defects, by dissolving the I that we carry within the detrimental Mephistopheles. In some places of the earth, very secretly, there are select human groups in contact with the cosmic visitors, from whom they have received a small number of interplanetary ships. In the Himalayas, filled with snow and cold, there is a certain group of llamas who are in contact with our brothers and sisters from space. That group very secretly possesses a certain number of flying saucers with which they travel through infinite space. In other places, the Earths are similar groups that already possess flying saucers. We are affirming something that cannot even remotely be accepted by the know-it-all, ironic, sarcastic, and vain intellectual loafers. However, what does it matter to science or to us? Let us go, brothers and sisters of the Gnostic movement, to humbly prepare ourselves in order to become worthy and as a select and hidden group to meritoriously receive our brothers and sisters from space. On December 27th, 1968, our second Gnostic Congress will be celebrated in Barranquilla, Colombia, South America. This event will be international. Thus, all the delegations from all the Gnostic sanctuaries from America must attend. Among other things, this Gnostic Congress must deeply study methods and systems of conducive action to propagate these ideas everywhere, in order to prepare the environment for our brothers and sisters from space. It is necessary, it is urgent to propagate these teachings and to form true homes for our brothers and sisters from space. We invite the brethren of all religions, schools, and sects to this great international spiritual I can't say that word. Let's just say Congress, without distinctions of creed, race, society, school, order, sex, or color. The Extraterrestrials mission. Okay. Friends, I address all of you again in order to converse a little bit about the cosmic ships that navigate our space. This very intriguing theme about flying discs has been propagated throughout the earth. Already nobody can deny it. Unquestionably today, the ones who dare to deny it, it is heard only because of his stubbornness. The British themselves no longer deny it. In England, a short time ago, they officially declared the flying saucers exist and are manned by extraterrestrials, who are people who supersede us by many millions of years of civilization. We earthlings cannot comprehend them. We prefer not to think about it. We are going to see if we will be capable of making our own ships in order to conquer the infinite. These are the words that the British gave to the world regarding flying saucers. Therefore, those who today deny it are presumed to be stubborn as described, since this has been demonstrated over and over again, and with photographs as much as in the north as in the south, in the east as in the west. Obviously, the Earth cannot be the only inhabited planet. It would be an absurdity to think that our world, a very small speck of sand within infinite space, would be the only planet with the exclusivity of having people. Indeed, truly, the plurality of inhabited worlds maintained some time ago by Camille Flammarion is a tremendous reality. Nevertheless, scientists, as usual, continue doubting. Recently, a space probe was sent to Mars in order to know if there is life there. The scientists of NASA concluded emphatically affirming that there is no life on Mars. Yet the photographs they showed humanity are not of Mars. Indeed, those photographs are on the moon. This means that the Martians knew how to adjust the American photograph apparatus towards our terrestrial satellite. Therefore, that those machines transmitted to Earth were lunar images. This that I know is simply based, even if it seems incredible, on the information given to me by an extraterrestrial who laughs when commenting about the foolishness of the Americans and their NASA. It would be an absurdity to suppose that people as cultured as the Martians would let Earthlings develop a detailed map of their planet. They know very well the intentions of the Earthlings. They do not ignore the destructive character of the inhabitants of the earth. Yes, Earthlings are destructive. They are demonstrated it to citation. Thus, nobody in the cosmos ignores this. It is not irrelevant to remember that the atrocities that the terrible Spaniard Hernan Cortez committed here in our beloved Mexico, or those that Pizarro committed in Peru. Therefore, if the Martians were invaded by Earthlings, such would be the fate they would experience. And thereafter their wonderful ships with which they navigate the infinite space would be used with Machiavellian intentions by the governments of Russia and the United States. Such ships would be loaded with atomic bombs in order to destroy defenseless cities. They would be used in order to conquer other planets of the starry space, thus exporting all of the Earthling atrocities across the cosmos. This is very well known by the Martians. Thus they are not ingenious as to let us make a map of their planet. What I am affirming is based on trustworthy information. I am not trying to invent anything new. The Martians have orders to defend themselves, and they will do so if the Earthlings try to invade them. On Mars there are cities like Teneo, for example, which is inhabited by Pacific people who never prepare plans of war, nor do they invent atomic bombs in order to destroy anybody. The inhabitants of Teneo are in no way willing to let themselves be invaded by hordes of Earthlings. This is the crude reality of the facts. Multiple ships navigate the starry space. There are gigantic ones, like the cargo ships that carry small ships within their belly. These cargo ships are used for trips not only within our galaxy, but also to navigate to different galaxies. They are properly prepared to travel throughout the unalterable infinite. There also exist tiny ships, and this is something that will surprise you, of about 20 or 30 centimeters. Absurd, you might say. Such tiny ships do not exist. Who would navigate in such small ships? They are navigated by cosmic Lilliputians, supermen with very tiny gelatinous bodies. Humans are no more than 10 centimeters in size. To what will one be exposed when affirming such a thing in this day and age, in the 20th century, in the atomic age, of an age of X-rays and laser rays? One is exposed to mockery, of course, since the scientists of our planets Earth believe that they own the entire wisdom of the universe, but they are deluded. All of the rottenness of theories that abounds here, there, and everywhere, and that forms the culture of the century is indeed vulnerable. That is not pure science. The scientists of the Earth do not know pure science, since in order to have access to the amphitheater of cosmic science, pure science, it is necessary to have opened the inner mind. Allow me to remind you again that there are three minds in the human being. The first one is sensual, where the leaven of the materialistic Sadducees is deposited. The type of mind develops its basic concepts via external sensory perceptions. This mind knows nothing about reality, nothing about what is which beyond simple external perceptions. The second mind is the intermediate mind, where all the types of beliefs are deposited. Obviously, to believe is not to know. We have entered into the age of knowledge, in the age of Aquarius. Beliefs are beliefs, yet they do not imply wisdom. The leaven of the Pharisees is deposited in the second mind. Jesus, the Christ, warns us against the leaven of the materialistic Sadducees and the leaven of the believer Pharisees. If in fact we want to penetrate in the amphitheater of pure science, a third mind is necessary. The third mind exists but is closed. We need to open it. This is the inner mind. The mind is opened when one finishes with one's psychological defects, when anger, greed, and frightful lust, envy, pride, laziness, gluttony, vanity, etc. are eliminated in oneself. Indeed, truthfully, those who eliminate their psychological defects will awaken their consciousness. The awakening of their consciousness opens the inner mind. Where the inner mind is opened, truth, faith arises, which is not the run-of-the-mill faith, but the conscious faith of the one who knows, of the one who can see, hear, and touch, and feel the great realities of the amphitheater of the cosmic science. The extraterrestrials are people who have opened their inner mind, supermen in the most complete sense of the word, as of those of El Desierto de los Leones, a wonderful contact that I recently had and that I narrate to you. Because, for the good of humanity, one must give testimony of what one has seen and experienced, so I will never be ashamed of having such a testimony before the solemn verdict of the public consciousness. Regarding the promise of being taken to other planets that the captain of that intergalactic ship gave me, along the way we will see that the promise was convincing for me, because I know that they never deceive anybody and they always fulfill their words, no matter what the cost might be. They speak little, but they say much, and when they utter it, and they fulfill it, since they are not earthlings. So I comprehended that such a way is the path of wisdom, the path of perfection. I will fight, yes, in order to eliminate my psychological defects. These extraterrestrials, I understood, are intergalactic travelers. The small ship that I saw, and within which they descended, obviously returned to a cargo ship that had been in orbit around the Earth. Superman navigated in those cargo ships. For galaxy to galaxy, they are infinitely perfect and are beyond good and evil. Earthlings abhor them. A short time ago, when two of those ships soared over the United States, jet fighters left in order to destroy them. One of the ships flew away and vanished into space, and the other descended, settled smoothly on a tower over the electrical energy. Then the blackout of New York took place and not only affected the American nation, but also Canada. Generals of the American Army exclaimed, "Behold, the Achilles heel of the United States of North America." Indeed, the powerful titans of the North can do nothing without electrical forces. Thus, just a handful of extraterrestrials manning a ship paralyzed the powerful nations of the American states. Therefore, it is the extraterrestrials had wanted to destroy the country, they would have done it in a matter of seconds. Likewise, if they wanted to make the planet explode, they would have already done it, but they're not destructive. They love us, and they come to us in order to help us. Yet instead of welcoming them with our open arms, like our saviors, like our redeemers, we receive them with cannon shots, or we flee desperately as the cannibals in which mountains flee when they see an airplane. Yet this is the lamentable state in which we are. The extraterrestrials are cultured people who do not kill anybody, not even a small bird, and earthlings fear them. Many ask, why don't the extraterrestrials land in cities like New York or Paris and show themselves in public in order to dictate lectures? To such a question I would respond the following. If somebody found himself in a deep jungle surrounded by cannibals, what would he do? Indubitably, he would flee. He would have no other alternative. The extraterrestrial who could defend themselves, who can deny it? Nevertheless, they do not have the desire to destroy anybody. They are not assassins. Earthlings are mistaken when thinking that they come to assassinate people. Such a thought is not true. We do not deny that on some occasions they have taken some people into their ships, then to space, and thereafter they have brought them back, returning them to the place where they took them. Yes, that is true. However, this has an explanation. It so happens that earthlings are very strange. They have their consciousness asleep. They seem like somnambulists who walk the streets with their tremendous perversity. Indeed, earthlings are somehow a source of curiosity. Therefore, some are taken in order to be studied in laboratories that exist in space. These laboratories are located within some cosmic ships. So beings are rare as sleepy, unconscious, and destructive as earthlings are a cause for curiosity. And for such a reason, earthlings are taken in order to be placed in laboratories for study. That is a crude reality. However, no type of harm is ever inflicted upon them, and they are brought back to the place from where they have been taken. It is clear that there are some exceptions about which I will speak to you tonight. An unusual but wonderful case happened in Ecuador. One day, among many, a man who had studied in some Eastern schools saw a cosmic ship that hovered over the garden of his house. Certain extraterrestrials opened the hatchway of their ship, descended by a staircase, and approached him. They invited him to board the ship, and he accepted. He was a cultured and spiritual man in the most complete sense of the word. He was willing to go, so that when he was invited to take a stroll in space, he accepted. He was taken to a satellite of Jupiter, to Ganymede, where he witnessed a powerful civilization. Ganymede is the largest moon in our solar system and is bigger than, I hope I'm saying that right, Ganymede, I don't know, is the largest moon in our solar system and is bigger than Mercury and Pluto. Scientists have found evidence of an atmosphere and an underground ocean. The inhabitants of Ganymede have a brain that is little more voluminous than those of the Earth. Their pineal gland is connected to their pituitary gland by means of certain nervous threads, and their pituitary glands in turn is connected to their optical nerve by other nervous threads. Consequently, the inhabitants of that satellite have a sixth sense, which they can see the fourth dimension and even more, the fifth, sixth, and seventh dimensions of nature and the cosmos. They build their houses underground. They have rich agriculture, and they do not have animals because their atmosphere there is not favorable for inferior species. Water is removed from certain volcanoes. With it, they satisfy their needs. All the inhabitants work in their factories. There is no money. It is unknown there. Thus, in exchange for the work, all inhabitants have bread, shelter, and refuge. The cosmic ships are the property of all. They lack nothing. No, they do not need the element called money that has inflicted so much damage upon the inhabitants of Earth. Thus, this is how the inhabitants of Ganymede are. Since they possess a sixth sense, they have studied medicine in a perfect manner, not only in its physical, chemical, and biological aspects, but also in its psychic and vital aspects. They know interior and exterior anatomy, which unfortunately the scientists of Earth do not know. The hour has arrived to understand that Ganymede is a satellite that rotates around the titan of the heavens called Jupiter. Jupiter has 12 satellites. It is as if it has a new solar system for itself. Often I have personally observed Jupiter through a telescope. I have seen its two belts at the equatorial center of that wonderful world. Those belts with their satellites rotate around that planet. Jupiter is extraordinary in the most complete sense of the word, a jewel of the heavens. Previously, the inhabitants of Ganymede lived in a world that was called the Yellow Planet. It is good to know that in our solar system a planet once existed on which its people devoted themselves to atomic experiments. They performed multiple experiments. They made bombs that were successfully more destructive, and they finally managed to burst the planet asunder into pieces. Some fragments still rotate around the solar system, asteroids we would say, or loose Earth, and that is known by the astronomers. But before the catastrophe happened to the Yellow Planet, the inhabitants of the world had been facing the philosophical dilemma of to be or not to be. A great avatar or messenger warned them about the catastrophe that waited for them. Most of the people, as always, did not believe, yet others accepted it. Then they were affiliated to the teachings of the wise man. They were sufficiently prepared by him, and finally they were psychologically corrected and ready to investigate Ganymede. Before the catastrophe happened, that wise man took them to Ganymede. You guys are going to have to correct me on that. And they settled there. Well, the friend of whom I am speaking was taken to Ganymede and was some days there. His diseases disappeared. He revitalized himself. He was placed under special scientific treatments. They invited him. Wow, it's freaking 1:30. Okay. They invited him to live among them, and he accepted on the condition that they allowed him to return to the planet Earth in order to give his goods to his brother. He returned and gave his entire fortune to his brother and his brother's wife. He determined a certain date to say farewell to them, since he was going to make a long trip. On that date, where he was preparing himself to leave, a gorgeous ship landed which illuminated the center of the garden. I am leaving, he said to them. His brother and sister-in-law were astonished. Ah, I had a feeling about this, his brother said. He boarded the ship and at the moment exclaimed, I am leaving by my own will, far and away from the planet Earth. Thus the ship took off. Nevertheless, a small camera in the form of a television was left for his terrestrial brother on Earth. It was enough to move some buttons, and it worked. The solar energy animates that apparatus. It is enough to concentrate the certain antennas that it has in order to establish contact with Ganymede. They communicated with the inhabitants of Ganymede and their brother, hoping to be taken away some day. Thus finally such a longed-for day arrived, and they were taken away. The inhabitants of Ganymede have an extraordinary wisdom, and they are willing to help the earthlings. They know the state in which the earthlings are. They do not ignore that a great catastrophe approaches them, and a giant of the heavens called Hercobulus is traveling at a vertiginous I don't even want to say it. Let's just say very fast, speeds through the starry space. When Hercobulus appears and all of you can see it in plain sight, you will then be convinced about what I am saying to you. Then that planetary mass, which is enormous, will magnetically attract the fire of the interior earth, which will bring forth volcanoes everywhere, and terrible tsunamis and great earthquakes will be originated. The entire crust of the earth will be destroyed, burned, and incinerated, and the revolution of the axes, what is he saying? And the revolving of the axes, there we go, I'll just say it that way, because I don't think it's right on here. Which is enormous. I'm just going to start over. When Hercobulus appears and all of you can see it in plain sight, you will then be convinced about what I am stating to you. Then the planetary mass, which is enormous, will magnetically attract the fire of the interior earth, which will bring forth volcanoes everywhere and terrible tsunamis, and great earthquakes will be originated. The entire crust of the earth will be destroyed, burned, and incinerated, and a revolution of the axis of the world will be produced at the height of the approach of Hercobulus. The poles will become equator, and the equator will become poles. Then the waters of the ocean will sink these continents. This is how this perverse humanity will end. A humanity that gave themselves to all the vices, that degenerated with homosexuality and lesbianism. A destructive humanity where each country rose against the other, where each human being raised his hand against his brother. This is how humanity will soon end. There will be survivors, yes, there will be. There is very well known by the inhabitants of Ganymede. They will continue, little by little, taking the more select people to their world. There they will cross them with people who live on their planet, and from such crossings a very special type of human will be born that will be returned to Earth. Wonders will be made with that type of humanity, because they will develop the faculties that inhabitants of Ganymede possess. A lovely opportunity will be given to some survivors who will remain on our planet Earth on an island on the Pacific, and there the sixth great race will be born. I say 6 because there have been 5 root races on the face of the earth, and all of them have ended with great cataclysms. Let us remember the Atlanteans. They perished within the waters of the great universal deluge produced by the revolution of the axis of the earth, where the sea swallowed Atlantis with its millions of inhabitants. That was, I repeat, the universal flood. Thus, this is how the 4th great root race perished. We are the 5th. It is obvious that the people of this root race will perish by strong earthquakes and tsunamis. This is why it is written in Aztec calendar, the children of the 5th sun will perish by the fire and earthquakes. Friends, at this moment in which we talk about very interesting aspects related with the extraterrestrials, another case comes to my memory about a man named Mr. Salvador Valunia Medina who went to Venus. I know him. He is my personal friend. This friend of mine was driving a car towards the United States of North America. I think we already talked about this. He went underneath the car. I'm just going to then he heard the steps, and then they invited to follow him. Thus, once inside the ship, the hatchway closed. He went to Venus. He was there for 5 days, and he saw how great their citizenship was. And thereafter, they brought him back to the planet Earth. So we know that, right? Okay. So in the Republic of Ecuador, another unusual case happened. An incredulous, skeptical, and materialistic man was seated at the end of his garden. A ship landed a short distance away. They invited him to board the ship, and he was taken to Jupiter. There he remained for several days. He witnessed an extraordinary civilization. They invited him to stay, yet he said to them, I must return to speak with the earthlings and give testimony about what I have seen and heard. He returned to Ecuador, and since then that man dedicated his study to Gnosis. The extraterrestrials exist and will always exist. Before the inhabitants of Earth learned the first foundations of mathematics, the space travelers had already come through the unalterable infinite. Thus, if they wanted, they could have destroyed us and made the Earth explode into pieces, but they're not destructive. They come with the intention of helping us on the eve of the great cataclysm that is approaching. They come to help us. Some of them have remained and hidden in diverse places on Earth, and only wait for the opportune moment in order to enter into activity. For example, in the Antarctic, in an underground city, lives a group of extraterrestrials. They are humans who came from the blue galaxy, humans of blue skin. Obviously, they have built that city under the ice. They have all manners of comfort, an atomic lighting system, etc. They enjoy beauty, are wise by nature, and a very wise king governs them. Soon, they will come when the catastrophe approaches. These humans of the blue galaxy will walk on the streets of the cities, trying to aid those who remain, before the great universal fire devours the face of the earth. These humans of the blue galaxy will appear in order to teach the path of uprightness to this humanity. Those who listen to them in those days will be totally saved. What? The last part of this is just question and answers from Samael Aun Weor. So, I've read some pretty, good books from Samael Aun Weor, but don't we have real pictures of Mars? I'm not doubting what he's saying, obviously, because I don't know, but it seems to me like I'm missing something here, right? This book was written over 20 years ago. I don't know. I love all of his other books. This one, just like he said, I may be the dummy, but I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around it, just to be honest with you guys. So let's get through these questions and answers and end this thing. Audience questions and answers about extraterrestrials. An earthling had the opportunity to see an extraterrestrial. Thus he asked, how many planets does our solar system have? The extraterrestrial answered that there are 12 planets. I want to know if this is true or not. Samael answers, well, indeed, this time they did not give you the exact number of planets, because there are 13 planets in our solar system. Let us count them in sequence, that this will be understood. Earth, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, Vulcan, Persephone, and Clarion. A total of 13 worlds in our solar system. There were 14, but it has so happened that the inhabitants of the yellow planet dedicated themselves, as I already said, to an atomic experiment. Thus they totally destroyed their world. Now, loose on Earth are asteroids rotate around the sun and are remnants of that destroyed planet. This is known by the scientists. Question from the audience. You mentioned a city in Mars named Tanio, T-A-N-I-O. Is this a personal experience that you had? That is to say, that you saw with your own eyes. Samael answers, certainly, Tanio is a city that exists, and when I mention Tanio, it relates to a direct report received by a man who belonged to a group of people who traveled to Mars. It is good for you to know that this moment the disciples of the Marconi continue with their scientific research within the jungles of the Amazon. They were performing their experiments when a group of planetary ships came from Mars and visited their installations in the Amazon. Ever since they have been in contact with the inhabitants of Mars, they do not have contact with modern civilization anymore. Indubitably, they learned from the Martians how to utilize solar energy. The last exploration they did was to the city of Tanio. Since I have been in contact with the scientists who went to Mars and who visited Tanio, I do not have any inconvenience to declare it is here before the audience, or declare it before the audience. In order for you all to know that in detail, likewise, I know one of the scientists of the Amazon who nowadays is on Mars and is married with a Martian woman. The inhabitants of Mars want friendly relations with Earthlings. They want a Mars-Earth alliance, which would be beneficial, but they are waiting for the big wave of destruction, the inhabitants of Earth to pass by, because, I repeat, at these moments the Earthlings are very dangerous. Human beings from Mars know that after the catastrophe they will be able to establish the Mars-Earth alliance with the new race. Mars is our neighboring planet and has a great civilization that want good relations with the Earthlings. Mr. Tage, T-A-G-E, an inhabitant of Mars who always descends in the jungle of the Amazon, has become a paladin of the Great Alliance. I am sure that it will be realized, but first of all, it is necessary to select the inhabitants of the planet Earth. Question from the audience. Why are the blue men waiting for the catastrophe to happen? Why are they waiting and do not begin once to just help us? I mean, why are they going to do it in an absurd manner? I think that if they're going to mix themselves with the people and take them one by one, and since they have all this power, why do they not do it in an intelligent manner, but only helping 1, 2, or 3 people who they find in their way, seeing that they can help more? What are they waiting for? It's a pretty good question. Samael answers, the question is quite interesting. Obviously, it is the best question that has come today from this great audience. The one who asked reflects much intelligence and great courage. Indeed, truly, if a blue race appeared now in cities like New York, Paris, or London, I'm sure they would not be treated very well. What fate would await the extraterrestrials if they become visible and tangible in the great capitals of the world? What would become of their ships? Are you sure the multitudes would respect their ships? Are you sure that the multitudes would respect their lives, or their inhabitants of their planets? Until now, the facts have demonstrated the opposite. When 2 ships flew through the skies of the United States of North America, they wanted indeed what the gentleman has mentioned, contact with humanity. But the North American government prepared to welcome them with bullets, machine guns, and missiles. Yet, that is the type of reception that we give to the humanities of other worlds. If Earthlings could capture the extraterrestrials alive, they would take them to the laboratories in order to study them and to know what are they made of, and if they are made of paste or starch. And if their ships could be captured, they could be loaded with atomic weapons in order to destroy defenseless cities and to dominate other planetary humanities by force. Hold on. Weird looking bug just flew in here. I've never seen anything like it. Indeed, we are not meek asleep. I have known many people who say, well, why are those inhabitants of other worlds, those extraterrestrials, flying around? It would be good if we shoot them down first and clear out the doubts once and for all. The extraterrestrials know very well the fate that awaits them. That is, the Earthlings would kill them. Many avatars were sent in the old times, and some of them were poisoned, others stabbed, and others sent to exile. Others were hanged. Earthlings poisoned Buddha himself. Other wise men were once sent to the earth, and the Earthlings terminated them also. Finally, the rabbi, the divine rabbi of Galilee, was sent to the earth, and the Earthlings crucified him. Thus, this is how Earthlings are. The Antichrist of false science performs inconceivable efforts in order to hide anything that in one way or another tries to eclipse him. Such is the extraordinary case that happened on the Hill of the Three Crosses in the town of Cruz Alta at the Villarreal state of Puebla, Mexico. A place that in order to reach it, one needs to walk several hours given the complicated state of the land. Due to certain mechanical faults, a spaceship 25 meters in diameter needed to descend in the mentioned geographical place. The ship was manned by 4 extraterrestrials. One of them died and one was wounded, who was properly taken care of by medical science. The other 2 were unharmed, were captured and taken to the United States. Ooh, there it is. It is not irrelevant to emphatically affirm that the precious ship was taken to the United States with shameful goals and intentions. For several days the Army mounted a ring of security around the ship. The 2 crew members, who were unharmed, were seen by the people. They had an average stature of 2.5 meters, 8.5 feet. Their suits were of immaculate whiteness, and their silence absolute, since they did not talk with any person who approached them. We are talking about clear, concrete, and definitive facts. Obviously, the Antichrist forces fight to gag the people. They do not want people to know the truth. They mortally hate anything that in one or any other way demonstrates the falsity of materialistic science. I declare that these moments we do not know the fate of the 2 survivors had in the hands of the earthlings. Likewise, we do not know more about the fate of the wounded one, and we are unaware if the corpse of the one who died was buried or taken to a laboratory. With this unfortunate accident, it has been demonstrated again let's just skip that word. I don't even know if he spelled it right. It has been demonstrated again the true existence of the cosmic ships, a theme that your friend, the author of these writings, initiated in the year 1950, and that since then was rejected by the learned ignoramus of all times. I have the high honor of being the first person to speak everything that I have said from the year 1950 is properly verified. I do not care about the retaliation that that may be unleashed against my persona, because what is of interest to me is to present the truth to the world, no matter what the cost may be. Ooh, that's pretty rad. We're getting close here, almost to the end. Just a few more pages. The consequences of the comet Condor, that's Kondoor. First of all, it is necessary to comprehend the meanings of our studies and their fundamental objectives. Indeed, we need to leave the condition in which we find ourselves, since this terrestrial humanity is abnormal, unbalanced. We need to comprehend this. The psyche of the intellectual animal, mistakenly called human, is altered. As a consequence or corollary of all this, we can state that the entire terrestrial humanity is mentally, psychically, and volitionally unbalanced. Why does everybody want to use big words? I can't say a lot of big words. I went to school in Arkansas. I want you to understand that during the times of the Lemurian continent, when humanity still did not possess the abominable kundabuffer organ, all people were balanced, and they lived in harmony and peace. Yet an unexpected event occurred as a result of the erroneous calculations of certain individuals. The comet Condor collided with the planet Earth. Then, as a consequence of that collision, a frightful catastrophe was produced. Some gigantic islands, better said, quasi-continents, that were densely populated, sank into the ocean, and millions of human beings perished. The Earth was in a chaotic state, leaving the geological layers in an unstable situation. Therefore, the layers trembled insistently. Great earthquakes and frightful tsunamis were produced, and since the equilibrium of the geological layers were lost, there was no stability in our world, and human life threatened to disappear. During the age, some sacred individuals came to the earth. I want to emphatically mention that the Archangel Sakaki and his most high commission, consisting of a group of specialists. These individuals studied the problem and decided that in order to stabilize the geological layers of our world, it was necessary to implant the abominable kundabuffer organ in our humanity. It is obvious that the physical body is a machine that captures specific types of cosmic energies. They are soon transformed and retransmitted to the interior layers of the earth. Yes, the earth is nourished because the earth is a living organism that needs nourishment or nutrition. Therefore, when the alteration to the human organism was allowed, The cosmic forces were also altered and became lunar. It so happened then that from the coccyx, the fundamental bone of the dorsal spinal, the sacred fire was precipitated downward, and in this turn such a precipitated fire developed the inferior part of the dorsal spine, thus causing to grow from the coccyx, the base of the spinal column, an appendage similar to that of a tail that we see in the simians. Tailed organisms are fundamentally lunar, so the lunar forces stabilize the geological layers of our planet Earth. Nevertheless, a certain miscalculation happened in the procedure of the Archangel Sakaki, and in his most high commission, when they allowed the kundabuffer organ to be kept in the human being beyond the normal, objective time calculations. Thus time passed, and during latter periods when the chief common universal arc physicist Seraphim Angel Lucius, or that's Lucius, the Archangel Looisos, came to the earth, he became aware of those miscalculations. Since these sacred individuals know how to maneuver the cosmic energies and have power over life and death, by maneuvering the forces of the cosmos, they in fact managed to begin the process of terminating the kundabuffer organ, thus managing to destroy the organ totally. Even still, and to this day, a little bone exists at the base of our inferior part of the dorsal spine that is even known in medicine as the tail, which, as a diminutive, they call it little tail. Thus, indeed, truly, a residue of the abominable kundabuffer organ still remains in the anatomy of the human body. Once the kundabuffer organ was eliminated, it could be clearly verified by close observation that the abominable consequences of that organ remained within the 5 cylinders, or centers, of the organic machine. These 5 centers are intellectual, situated in the brain; emotional, situated in the heart; motor, superior part of the dorsal spine; the instinctual, inferior part of the dorsal spine; and the sexual in the genitalia. The evil consequences of the abominable kundabuffer organ remained with these 5 aforementioned centers. There are 2 more centers in the human being. They are not of a superior type: the superior emotional and superior mental. These were not affected. Nonetheless, the harmful psychic elements remain deposited within the machine. These elements are the psychic aggregates. In other words, we say the eyes. In Egypt, they are called the red demons of Seth. Anyhow, such aggregates, even when they are invisible to the physical eyes, are visible to the sense of psychological self-observation. Indubitably, the essence, that is, the consciousness of the being, was bottled up or encapsulated within such aggregates, living personification of our psychological types of defects, namely, anger, greed, lust, envy, pride, laziness, gluttony, etc. Regrettably, over time, these aggregates became stronger and stronger. Thus, indeed, nowadays, the essence of the human being, which is the enlivening the most decent element that we have with our interior, is conditioned by the psychic aggregates, since it is bottled up. There is something more that is bottled up: the mental or monastic essence, and our will, etc. Thus, in these conditions, each of us is a multiplicity, not an individual. This is why in the Christic Gospel of Mark, Jesus of Nazareth asked the man with an unclean spirit, "What is thy name?" And he answered, saying, "My name is Legion, for we are many." Thus each one of us is Legion. It is also stated in the Gospel of Luke. And it came to pass afterward that the great Kabir Yeshua ben Pandura went throughout every city and village, preaching and showing the glad tidings of the kingdom of God. And the 12 were with him, and certain women which had been healed of evil spirits and infirmities, Mary called Magdalene, out of whom went 7 devils. Luke 8. Luke chapter 8, verse 1 and 2. That's what it is, sorry. These 7 devils inevitably personify the 7 capital sins. There is no doubt that these 7 multiply into many evil spirits. Yet in the biblical gospel only the main 7 are cited. Nevertheless, we must also remember Virgil, the poet from Mantua, when he said, "No, not if I had 100 mouths, 100 tongues, and throats of brass, inspired with iron lungs, I could not have those my horrid crimes describe, nor half the punishment those crimes have met." The Aeneid, Book 6, Aeneid. Those were the words of the master of the Florentine Dante. They invite us to reflection. Therefore, having the consciousness, the will, and even the mental essence bottled up within the aggregates, inevitably we are conditioned in the consciousness, in the will, and even in the mental psychic field for such, because I emphatically say that this terrestrial humanity is imbalanced. We know well that the red demons of Seth that personify our many selves quarrel amongst themselves. They do not have concordance or harmony whatsoever. When one of them emerges, he imposes himself to achieve control of the organic machine. The rest of them fight for supremacy. Finally, the one for some moments dominates the brain, soon falls, leaving the place of another. When looking at these things from all of these angles, we can derive that we do not have a single mind, but thousands of minds that contradict, that discuss amongst themselves. This, we do not have a defined will. A permanent ego does not exist within us, but thousands of wills. We can evidence that our essence is turned asunder into pieces, shaken by the storms of inferior emotions. In a word, we are abnormal creatures. I invite you to think a little. Let us observe a jealous man. How can we call him sane when his jealousy transforms a flea into a horse? Yet if a woman is the jealous one, she cannot see the tranquility her man next to another woman, or him conversing very quietly with her, and vice versa, since the same happens with the males. Behold the attitudes that the jealous ones take. What quarrels! Those who are very jealous suffer because of a simple glance. They are completely demented. Let us now observe a person filled with hatred, which is monstrous and abominable. He hates the entire world. He does not love anyone. He abhors everybody. He makes everybody abhor him. He is completely demented, and all of his actions are madness. There is no harmony within him. Let us observe an angry one, thunderings with thunderbolts, striking others with his hands and feet, with his eyes out of their sockets. He is completely demented. Let us examine a lustful one who abominable they turn out to be. What perverted attitudes they take, what filthy glances. They are abnormal. Let us observe the avaricious ones. Their disarranged physiognomy, the eyes of the avaricious ones make unmistakable their actions, their proceeding manners, namely hiding the money and even suffering from hunger, since they do not want to spend $1. To that end, they are crazy, demented. Therefore, truly I tell you that the people of the planet Earth are demented, mentally imbalanced. What is worse is that they are not aware that they are mentally imbalanced. They believe they are normal, that they are using their mental faculties perfectly. They can only become aware of their mental imbalances the day they are no longer mentally imbalanced. To catch-22. Nobody can become perfectly mentally balanced so long as he continues with the ego, the I, alive. Therefore, equilibrium is achieved by eliminating all of those psychic aggregates. Then our conjunction constitutes the ego, the I, the myself, the self-willed. There is no doubt that the people of the earth would not even remotely accept that they are mentally imbalanced. Nevertheless, they are. Was the First World War a matter of sane people? What about the Second War? Was that a matter of sane people? Was the launching of the atomic bomb over Hiroshima and Nagasaki a matter of sane people? Listen, only a mad person can do that. Only demented people would do that, would dare do that. Yes, mentally imbalanced people. Thus, indeed, truly we propose to eliminate those psychic aggregates that we carry within our interior and which make us abnormal people. How can we achieve this? Through what methods? It is obvious that the psychological self-observation is necessary in order to achieve it. Thus, when one admits that one possesses their particular individual psychology, in fact, one begins to self-observe. And when one self-observes, one is discovering oneself. And self-revelation exists in every self-discovery. Nevertheless, we need to perform psychological self-observation in a continuous manner, from instant to instant, from moment to moment. The defects that we carry within flourish while in relation with our acquaintances, in the factory, in the country, in our house, and if we self-observe, we see them. A discovered defect must be submitted to the inner self-reflection of the being. It is urgent to comprehend them in all of the levels of the mind. Thus, when a defect has properly been comprehended, we need to eliminate it. We must apprehend the complete differentiation between comprehension and elimination. To comprehend is not enough. We have to eliminate. The I, or for example, anyone can comprehend that he has the defect of lust. Yet this does not signify that he has eliminated it. Anyone can comprehend that he has the defect of revenge. Yet this does not signify that he has eliminated it. The mind by itself cannot alter any defect. A power superior to the mind is necessary. Fortunately, such a power exists in a latent manner within our interior. I want to emphatically revert to the divine Kundalini Shakti, the divine cosmic mother. She is a variant of our being. She is our being, but a derivative, a derivation. I learned this precisely from her herself. On a certain occasion in Tibet, I interrogated my divine mother Kundalini as follows. You and I look like two different beings. Nonetheless, we are the same being. She answered, yes, my son, we are the same being, but derivatives. Thus this must be understood. She is Mara, Isis, Adonia, Ensobertha, Rhea, Saberles, Astarte, Diana, Tonantzin, etc. She is the igneous serpent of our magical powers. Thus, when the devotee invokes her, she then assists him. Obviously, she has the power to eliminate any given psychological defect. Undoubtedly, those who work in the flaming forge of Vulcan can invoke her, precisely in those moments in which the lingam yoni of the Greek mysteries are found properly connected. She, reinforced by the transcendental sexual electricity, rapidly disintegrates any given aggregate that has been previously comprehended. Those who do not work in the forge of the Cyclops can invoke her during their meditation, and she will assist them by disintegrating their psychological aggregates. Talking about some deep stuff here. I clarify. There's only like 3 pages left, 4 pages. I clarify, one can eliminate 100% of one's psychic aggregates in the work that one performs in the forge of the Cyclops. Yet, when one is not working in the flaming forge of Vulcan, one can eliminate 25 to 30% of the aggregates. So by all means, without this annular serpentine power that develops in the body of the Gnostic ascetic, the absolute pulverization of the undesirable psychic elements that we carry within would not be possible. What I am talking about is transcendental. We need to work on ourselves if we truly want to change and become normal individuals. It is necessary to understand the disintegration of the undesirable elements. It's always very difficult. Regardless, those sacred individuals who made such a mistake because of their erroneous calculations indeed inflicted a great harm upon us. Thus they have to pay their debts in the future Mahamvataras in accordance with the law of Nemesis. It is necessary to understand that when the psychic aggregates appeared with our organic nature as an outcome of the abominable kundabuffer organ, they were processed with our psyche in accordance with the law of 7. Due to this, total disintegration of all the undesirable psychic elements that we carry within our interior is frightfully difficult. Let us take into account, in order to become more clear, that these elements possess themselves in 7 levels of being. Some saints achieve the elimination of aggregates in 2 or 3 or 4 levels, even 5. Yet those who have achieved the elimination of those aggregates in all 7 levels of the being are very rare. Therefore, we face a difficult work. If you believe that it's possible to achieve the final liberation by means of another way, listen, you're absolutely wrong. I am widely illustrating this theme for you so that you can understand these studies are the reason for us to be gathered here. Obviously, we need to know our purpose in gathering ourselves here, in these studies, and for what? If curiosity is the simple motive that moves you, listen, there are many things to be curious about. For example, in the city, entertainment centers and cinemas, the bulls and the arena, etc. Yet, into these studies is something very serious, because to reduce the psychic aggregate to cosmic dust within the 7 levels of being is not a simple task. Indeed, to emancipate the essence, to disembowel the mind and will is not an easy task. The mind in itself is a substance. It is the manas. Yet it is bottled up within the aggregates, and therefore it has become not one mind, but many minds, thousands of minds. Yet psychic aggregate has its own mind, and since we have thousands of aggregates, then thousands are the minds that we have. Truly, we have 10,000 psychic aggregates that we need to turn into dust, and which process themselves in 7 levels. In esotericism, the psychic aggregates are denominated whales. In the Old Testament in the Bible, it is stated, Saul hath slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. 2 Samuel chapter 18, verse 7. It is necessary to know and to understand this. A short time ago, I visited a Mayan palace in Cancun that has 10,000 crosses of St. Andrew. So let it be understood that to pulverize 10,000 aggregates, it is not an easy task. Thus, if you are willing to perform this task, I congratulate you. Yet if you're not willing, listen, the submerged evolution within the bowels of the earth is waiting for you. Because if you cannot do it, the earth can. Yes, if you are not capable, the laws of nature are. If you do not do the works, the laws of nature will do it for you down there within the infernal worlds. I do not advise you to devolve within the bowels of the submerged mineral kingdom, since the laws are frightfully multiplied there. Thus the sufferings are terrible until the second death. Therefore, at the last instant, the essence, having suffered a lot, becomes free, and it emerges again to the surface of the earth in order to initiate new evolving processes. It is preferable that you perform the work here and now, because now you are before a dilemma. Whether you do it or not, if you do it, marvelous. You will then be free. Yet if you do not do it, nature will take care of such a work within the bowels of the world. Such is the crude reality of facts. Nevertheless, I know the earthlings very well. Thus you might think that these are just consequences of my intellect. Yet truly I tell you, this is not a matter of lucubrations of the mind. I am talking about the facts. Since I am an awakened individual due to the fact of having reduced my ego to cosmic dust, it is obvious that I know about the submerged devolution within the bowels of the earth. So, it is preferable to work upon ourselves here and now. I talk to you about facts. I talk to you about what I have seen and heard, about what is factual in direct manner to me. Reflect. We are gathered here in order to study. You have come here in order to listen, and I have come to talk to you in a frank manner. We need to become serious, otherwise failure awaits us. Regrettably, it is very difficult to find serious people, since the great majority are playing. Today, they are in a little school, and tomorrow in another, and after tomorrow in another, and likewise they are live playing. They are not serious. If you think that you can find something outside of yourselves, listen. You are mistaken. The one who does not find truth within himself will never find it outside himself. Thus, reflect, become serious work upon yourselves. Transform yourselves, because this is what is fundamental. Inverential peace, Samael Aun Weor. That's it. Wow. There's an epilogue on here, but I don't think I should read it. It talks about the ship and stuff. That's what you Yeah, I'll read it for you. It's only a couple pages. I mean, that's why you came to this reading. It was about cosmic ships, so let's just go all the way here. A couple more pages. Eminences, President of the United States of America and the Prime Minister of the Soviet Union. This is like an open letter he's reading. Please excuse us for not mentioning your full names. We do not know in what year this letter will arrive to your hands, and it is clearly logical. Times change, and we do not know who that date will occupy the top position of your respective countries. The intention of this open letter is to inform you that the conquest of space has already reached in Latin America. It is clearly natural that you will smile with skepticism before such impudent information, or possibly you will consider as it is insolent. We just want to fulfill our duty. Thus we advise you not to spend more money on space rockets, such as money must be utilized better. Space rockets are good for nothing, since they are true failures. At this moment, in a secret place of South America, within the deep heart of the jungle, there is a scientific society of 98 eminent scientists from different European countries. The society follows the footsteps of the great wise scientist Guillermo Marconi, who with great mastery learned how to use this powerful solar energy. At this moment, under the guidance of Martian's wise men, this society is building a wonderful interplanetary ship which they have not thoroughly studied all of your territories, but moreover they have managed to travel to the moon and Mars. It is not irrelevant to clarify to you that said scientific society has enough money in order to continue its works, thanks to the economic support of the Martians. I clarify, it would not be strange to us if you indigently discard this letter, since your pride and skepticism are very well known on planet Earth. Nevertheless, within a few years you will have concrete proof of our affirmations. Listen, the liquid fuel that you use for your space rockets is ineffective for interplanetary navigation. The spaceships designed by the Martians and built by wise people of the mentioned scientific society under the direction of Martian wise men are propelled by solar energy. The scientists of this society are eminently religious people. There is even a priest among them. It does not matter which religion. We are absolutely convinced that the conquest of outer space is absolutely impossible if we exclude religiousness. All of the inhabitants of the cosmos are profoundly religious. All of them know very well that divine is latently and immanently found in every atom of the infinite. The mentioned scientific society has constructed the great underground laboratory in the heart of the jungle. This laboratory has all that is necessary for the investigation. The contact with the Martians was achieved December 16th of the year 1955 at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. At the hour, 5 Martian space mechanics flew over the jungle and 1 landed. 4 Martian people descended. The Martian head of the expedition among them. Since then, contact has been established, and the Martian spaceships continue to land in that region. The 98 scientists who reside with that deep jungle of South America coexist with the Martians and are learning the science of interplanetary navigation. The mentioned scientists have received from the lands of the Martian captain, His Eminence Mr. Tage, a gold sheet with the following inscription: Mars, Mars, a universal brother of the immense outer space, pays homage and friendship to Dogu, or that's what they call Earth, with a strong longing to unite all beings who live in one single spirit, and the infinite spirit for glory and peace eternal. So the Martians call Mars Loga and the Earth Dogu. We congratulate the Martian captain, Mr. Tage, for his 4-word speech. These 4 words are Sundi Dogu Loga Abba, which means God, Earth, Mars, Alliance. With this speech, the gold sheet, the alliance between Martians and Earthlings, has been sealed. We also send our congratulations to Mr. Martinelli for the beautiful and significant ring given to Mr. Tage on October 12th of the year 1956. The most important cosmic event of all the centuries upon the face of the earth after the coming of our Lord Christ was performed at 12 noon. One of the most illustrious members of the mentioned scientific society, the very illustrious Mr. Narciso Genovese, stated that the precise hour the Columbus expedition left for the planet Mars. We owe very much to Mr. Narciso regarding this subject that is, the scientific expedition to the planet Mars. Thus, if this letter arrives to him, let him receive our congratulations. As Columbus arrived at America with 3 ships, likewise 3 cosmic ships were constructed by the terrestrial scientists under the direction of the Martians. The names of the 3 cosmic ships are Loga, Dagu, and Ebba, Mars-Earth Alliance. The interior of the ships was adorned with the image of Christ. Thus the trip was performed with total success. The convoy was formed by 3 terrestrial cosmic ships and 6 Martians, who accompanied the mission of escorting the terrestrial ships. 9 people formed the crew of the terrestrial ships, 3 for each of the terrestrial ships. The first stage of the cosmic flight reached the moon. Thus it was absolutely verified over and over again that the moon is a dead world. The expeditionaries rested on the moon and soon continued their trip to Mars. 10 more ships of Martian origin joined the expedition Ares on the moon. All the inhabitants of the city Tanjo, capital of the planet Mars, went to the port to welcome the inhabitants of Earth. The expedition remains 5 days on the planet Mars, dedicated to observe and study. They learned plenty on Mars, and after their victorious return, they continued in the heart of the South American jungle with their studies and investigations. The 98 European scientists dedicated to these investigations and studies under the direction of the Martian wise men want to share their knowledge with all the inhabitants of the Earth. They want all of humanity to participate in the interplanetary navigation. Regrettably, Russia and the United States, with their atomic experiments and nuclear blasts, are hindering, impeding the members of such an august scientific society from making us, all of the inhabitants of the Earth, participants in these cosmic trips. The 2 great world wars that filled the world with pain, and now the Cold War with all its possibilities of becoming hot, filling the world again with blood and destruction, are the main factors that impede the cultural exchange with the Martians and the cosmic trips. Space rockets are no longer necessary. The contact with the Martians is already established. Now, what is necessary in order to participate in the cosmic trips is the dissolution of the I. As long as the I continues to exist, there will be no peace. And while there is no peace, interplanetary trips are impossible. In these precise moments in which we live, we do not need space rockets, but the study of the I and its total death. Thus, and only thus, the trips to Mars will become possible. It is possible to take to Mars assassins, the greedy drunkards. It is impossible to take to Mars assassins, greedy, drunkards, gluttons, materialists, Marxists, enemies of the Eternal One, thieves, prostitutes, etc. On Mars, peace reigns. Governments, nationalities, armies, and police are not even necessary. There are no delinquents on Mars. And even if some were born like that, he would be considered ill and would be taken to an isolated sanatorium. Gentlemen, think about what this means. Think about a world like this, a world where the I no longer exists. Imagine for a moment an army of Earth invading Mars. Comprehend what such horror, such barbarism signifies. The author of this letter begs you, gentlemen, in the name of truth, to end your atomic explosions, to finish the Cold War, and to initiate a time of universal religiousness. In a very special manner, I asked the comrades of the Soviet Union to suspend their public and private diffusion of materialist dialectics, and to intensify the propaganda in favor of religion. You must know, sirs, that all of the inhabitants of the cosmos render cult to the divinity, and that the conquest of outer space is impossible without religiousness. Please, gentlemen, I beg you in the name of the inhabitants of the earth, do not harm us any more with your wars, hatred, or divinity, nuclear blast, etc. This was signed in Mexico April 29th after the 3rd year of Aquarius, 1965, by the President and founder of the Gnostic movement, Samael Aun Weor. Boom. That's it. Call it a night. Hang it up. Aliens, cosmic ships, space, all of it. Do you believe it? Are there really Martians? If you read any other books by Samael Aun Weor, you would be totally convinced that this man is telling the truth about everything. And then when you read this book, you kind of lean back a little bit. So, I don't know. I'm going to investigate some of these names and stuff on here. And we all should decide for ourselves if this book is true. That's up to you. But thanks for sticking around. Tomorrow night, we're going to have a very special guest. We're going to talk about the Nephilim and things like that. We'll see you later, folks.